Hello. A very good morning to everyone. As we start our day with our Knowledge Forum 3, preparing for the future Global South IOs and Triangular Cooperation. As we begin the session, I would like to invite the co-chairs and speakers on the stage. Okay. So I would like to invite the speakers and co-chairs on the stage. First, I would like to invite Professor Gulshan Sachdeva, Chief Coordinator Dakshin at RIS. I would also like to invite Ambassador Arvind Gupta, Director Vivekananda International Foundation, India. Professor Sachdeva and Ambassador Gupta would be the co-chairs of this session. I would like to now invite Dr. Joshua Wycliffe, Chief of Operation International Solar Alliance, India. Mr. Enrique Mendel Zibel, Executive Director, Think Tank Spain, who would be joining us online. Nisha, please check if we can have online participants on our screen now. Then I would like to invite Dr. Melissa De Siena, Academic Coordinator for International Relations, Flasco University, Argentina, who would also be joining us online. Then I would like to invite Ruchita Berry, Senior Fellow, Vivekananda International Foundation, India. Professor Faisal Ismail, Director, Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance, University of Cape Town, South Africa. Professor Ismail would also be joining us online. Ms. Anita Prakash, Senior Policy Advisor, Area, Indonesia. Mr. Rafael de Mors, International Cooperation President Office, EPA from Brazil. Mr. Abdus Salam Saad Zildi, International Relations Specialist, Policy Center for New South Morocco. And finally, Professor Naval K. Paswan, Head, Department of Peace and Conflict Studies and Management, Sikkim University, India. With this, I would like to hand over to co-chair Professor Gulshan Sachdeva. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Aslan. Good morning to today's session on preparing for future Global South international organizations and triangular cooperation. Since yesterday, we have learned a couple of things. We have many speakers in this particular session. Some of them are joining online. So we'll try to manage time in a manner where all the points are presented by the speakers. At the same time, we also have some time to have open discussion with you. So I'll just take 1 minute to introduce this particular topic, in a sense, what perhaps issues we would like to discuss in this session. I welcome also Ambassador Arvind Gupta, my co-chair, and also head of the Vivekananda International Foundation, major think tanks very close to this place where we are speaking. Now, as I was saying, since yesterday, what we learned is that Global South is very different today. All the numbers we heard about their economies, investments, trade, population, and the growth which is happening in all Global South countries means these countries are going to play major role in the years to come. That's quite established. Second, other thing also we learned that the whole global system, global order is in transition. Most of the institutions are not very effective, looking from the UNSC to WTO to WHO, many others. At the same time, some of the institutions, global institutions, international institutions, in a different way are also being established within Global South. In fact, the organization I represent here, Dakshin Global South Center of Excellence, as we were discussing yesterday, it also has certain ambitions to play a role within Global South. How do we facilitate knowledge sharing among the countries of the Global South? We are also trying to connect with other partners in the Global South, more than 85, 87 countries, close to 145 plus think tanks we have already established. Yesterday we had another partnership with ICRISAT. So this is how slowly and slowly we are emerging. We also have many other speakers, those who are representing different international organizations from the Global South, or scholars, those who are studying those organizations from the Global South. So how do we really, what kind of role these international organizations from the Global South, what they can really learn from the existing organizations? And if we are thinking within kind of triangular cooperation, it means some of the things you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but many of those organizations are, I think, going to be more and more slowly more important. So these are some of the points which I think our speakers are going to talk. I'm not going to read out their CVs because they are there in your booklet. You can go through, and all of them are very distinguished speakers. Our first speaker was supposed to join Dr. Joshua Wycliffe from International Solar Alliance. He had some sudden change in his program. So now we will start with the second speaker, and some of them, three are actually joining online. Mr. Enric Mendiza Bal. He is Executive Director on Think Tank Spain. I hope he has joined online. Dr. Enric, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please. In fact, if you can just make your initial remarks somewhere between, say, 3 to 4 minutes, then we can come back to you again, and then we'll have some more meaningful conversation. Main key points in the first 3 minutes, please. Dr. Enric.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I cannot be there with you. I had some trouble with the visa, so my mistake. So I, as the name of my organization suggests, I spend my time studying think tanks from all over the world. And I started doing this with a focus on think tanks in the Global South about 15 years ago. I am actually Peruvian. I'm based in Spain right now, but I am from Peru. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 15 years or so is that there has been a shift in think tanks' demand for partnerships and collaboration. And I spent a lot of time making those partnerships happen, connecting organizations and helping them find new potential partners. And what I've noticed is a bit of a rejection, especially from southern think tanks, of what I'm calling old traditional types of relationships or partnerships that tend to exist between southern-based think tanks and particularly northern-based think tanks. And what I've seen in these old relationships is a pattern that is very clear to many. What you tend to see in the South are think tanks with a sectorial expertise, right? These are think tanks that have an expertise, say, in education policy in Peru or in South Africa or in India maybe, or think tanks that have an expertise in agriculture policy or macroeconomic policy. Basically, they are experts in the sector or field that they want to influence, they want to inform in their own countries. They typically have experts, world-class experts. But when they seek for partners in the global north, say in Germany, say in the US, they end up partnering with international development organizations. And these international development think tanks, they're not exactly like them. they're not dealing with education in Germany or education in the US or education in the UK, right? They're not dealing with agriculture policy or trade policy in Germany, in the US, in the UK. They're dealing with international development policy, which is, in essence, a very small part, a tiny part of their national budgets. It's almost a non-political issue. It comes up once in a while as a political issue, but nobody really cares too much about this. And what they tend to become is experts in other countries, other regions. But actually what the think tanks want, the Peruvian educational think tanks want, is to engage with the German educational think tanks or the Spanish educational think tanks, because they want to be able to share what they know and learn from what they know. They want a more of a peer-to-peer relationship. And this is something that I've noticed over the last decade, I say, emerging quite clearly in the search for these new relationships. And the reason why I think this is happening is because this is challenging the way that all partnerships have been established in the past. It challenges who controls the money, who controls the funds. Often these north-south relationships via international development think tanks or international development university programs have developed by the northern organization controlling the funds in building those relationships. Often these partnerships have been built by northern organizations inviting southern organizations. And often these relationships have been built with the northern organizations sort of controlling the agenda, the research agenda, the work agenda, and this is no longer of interest to many think tanks. And I think this shift opens up the possibility, not just for better north-south relationships, much more useful for the South, much more productive for the South, much more equal for the South, but also, of course, for triangular cooperation and in the way that I would see it, it's a much more open collaboration or cooperation where, in this case, think tanks in the Global South are able to find the partners that are most suited for their own interests, right? It will shift the power to the Global South. They can decide who they want to partner with. I think it'll also stop distracting many organizations in the South from thinking about, okay, what is equitable partnerships? You know, when you partner with whoever you want to partner, that's usually going to make sense to you. It's going to break that monopoly that a few northern organizations in the international development sector have over these relationships. And I think hopefully it will also help develop more sectorial, regional, even ideologically aligned partnerships between think tanks, between research organizations in any parts of the world, whether it's South-South, South-North, or a combination of those. So this is a pattern that I see emerging. I think over the next few years, the setting up of organizations such as yours, Chairman, also such as the Policy Center for the New South, who's in the panel, will help make this happen. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for presenting your very clear views in a very precise manner. So there are possibilities that certain things are already happening, and think tanks both from the north and also from the south could facilitate this particular transition. Next speaker we had Dr. Melissa Desencio, academic coordinator for international relations from Flexo, Argentina. We were really hoping, Dr. Melissa, to welcome you here in Delhi. A couple of months back, I was at Flexo in Buenos Aires, and we had a very good interaction. But hopefully we'll get you here soon back to Delhi. So, Dr. Melissa, over to you. 3-4 minutes, if you could just make your points clear.
3-4 minutes. Thank you very much, Ulshan. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ulshan. The first thing I would like to say thank you to RAS for the kind invitation. and I really want to congratulate you for the organization of this event. I really regret not being able to join you in person, but I am really honored to be part of this collective reflection and dialogue. So the topic of Global South international organizations and triangular cooperation that guides this panel, I think is a fundamental one, especially in the context of this crisis of multilateral and global governance organizations that Gulshan already mentioned. And this change in the structure of the international order is leading to a moment of uncertainty and crisis, which can also emerge as an opportunity for regional and global South organizations to rethink, reframe, and redesign the logics of development cooperation. Latin America has built a dense network of regional organizations that, despite institutional ups and downs, they reflect a constant pursuit of autonomy, integration, and development. Within this framework, regional and triangular cooperation has gained prominence as a modality that combines local knowledge with resources and experiences from more developed countries in an attempt to avoid replicating these asymmetries of traditional aid. From UNASUR, including Mercosur, ALBA, and now CELAC, Latin America regional organizations have served as platforms to project shared interests vis-à-vis the global north. This institutional fabric reflects not only temporary ideological affinities, but also a long-standing will to build autonomous capacities and shape international agendas from the global south. So, Latin America has played a dual role in South-South cooperation, acting both as a provider and recipient of development assistance, and positioning itself as a laboratory for innovative, context-driven cooperation practices. Countries such as Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Colombia have exported technical expertise in agriculture, social policy, health, and education, often based on successful domestic experiences through horizontal partnerships with Africa, Asia, and other parts of Latin America. This engagement has been underpinned by principles of solidarity, mutual benefit, and respect for national sovereignty, distinguishing it from traditional North-South aid models. However, Latin American contribution to South-South cooperation remains fragmented, lacking a unified regional strategy or robust institutional frameworks to scale up these initiatives. Brazil has led health and agricultural projects in Africa with Japanese or German support. Mexico has cooperated with Central America, India on different agendas, and Chile has positioned itself as a technical hub with high international credibility. These cases show how triangular cooperation can scale up localized experiences, avoiding these external impositions and adding value through context-based knowledge. In this current crisis of global multilateralism, marked by the paralysis that Gulshan already mentioned of the WTO, the declining credibility of the UN, fragmentation of the liberal order, Latin America faces a deep deficit in regional cooperation. What we can see now is that this political disarticulation, weak institutional coordination, and the erosion of shared agendas have prevented the region from articulating collectively and collective responses to common challenges such as economic recovery, climate change, and intensifying great power competition. This paralysis of bodies like UNASUR, that is basically dismantled or has been dismantled, and the limited effectiveness of CELAC reflect a broader leadership vacuum, where these short-term national interests have overtaken long-term integration goals. This fragmentation weakens Latin America's strategic presence and limits its ability to contribute to global governance debates. Yet, CELAC retains some sort of potential to reposition itself. It repositioned the region as a collective voice of Latin America and the Caribbean within the Global South, coordinating shared positions in multilateral forums and advancing autonomous agendas as development, health, and energy transition. Summits such as the CELAC China and CELAC EU demonstrate the value of these partnerships and the role of this regional organization in promoting inter-regional cooperation. So in this line, for example, the Adelante program from the European Union dedicated to fostering triangular cooperation between the EU and Latin America and the Caribbean is a good example of these experiences. In parallel, Latin America's incorporation into the BRICS Plus framework represents a strategic opportunity, not only to access alternative sources of financing, but also to help share a more plural, less hierarchical, and genuinely cooperative global order. So in this context, cooperation between India and Latin America offers fertile grounds across multiple agendas: energy, health, infrastructure, gender, social policies. While this is also serving as a strategic means of diversifying partnerships amid growing Chinese influence in the region. While Brazil's role has been thoroughly addressed during this event, and I'm sure it will also be addressed later on, it is worth emphasizing its position as a key regional actor. The influence is evident not only in its capacity to implement cooperation initiatives, but also in shaping the very language of engagement, preferring the term trilateral over triangular to underscore its agency and leadership in international cooperation. In short, I am not sure how long I have taken already. What we can see also is that Brazil has actively participated in trilateral partnerships, often as the main funder, working alongside developed countries such as Japan, Germany, the United States, as well as with multilateral institutions like UNDP, FAO, ILO, and other international organizations. So, in short, what we can see is that Latin America has turned triangular cooperation into a field of diplomatic and technical innovation, strengthening coordination through platforms like CELAC and aligning cooperation with regional priorities that will help enhance Latin American ability to shape the Global South development agenda. If it can do this, if it can strengthen its regional institutions and consolidate this autonomy, it could turn this instrument into a lever for fairer, more solidaristic, and more grounded insertion into global affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Melissa, for bringing very important points following the earlier speaker. So many things what we have learned so far from the first two speakers is that happening at the national level, in the sector-specific areas. Then there are also certain regional organizations, as she presented a couple of them from Latin America. But how do we really scale some of these initiatives at the Global South level? Now that's a real challenge. And as we learned yesterday also, in some of the discussions, that Global South is not a monolith. There are issues, but the same is also true from the Global North as well. What is West, we don't know. Although, when Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, she was visiting United States, she said we have to make the West great again. But we know what things are happening in all transatlantic alliance, where things are. Similarly, even within the European Union, which is one entity, legal entity, there are issues even with those countries. So if there are certain issues within Global South, we have to live with them, but still we have to scale some of these initiatives at the Global South level. That's what real challenge is and where we really have to work together. So Global South is continue to be there. And the next speaker we have, Dr. Ruchita Berry. She doesn't need any introduction, one of the leading experts on Africa in India. And now she's with the Vivekananda International Foundation. So maybe she'll tell us something already, some existing, major international organizations from the Global South, or in fact, what some people call it, global majority. Over to you, Dr. Ruchita.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Gulshan Sachdev, Dr. Arvind Gupta, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really glad to be here discussing the Global South and Triangular Cooperation. I'll be focusing on one of the informal international organizations, or what India calls a global South-led multilateralism, BRICS. So I'll be focusing on BRICS here. So to quote Prime Minister Modi, BRICS has been pursuing a strong cooperation agenda across various sectors. And we value that BRICS has become a platform for discussing and deliberating on issues of concern for entire Global South, including development imperatives and reform of multilateral system. So India and the most of the BRICS member states have been projecting BRICS as a voice of Global South. And why you may say that Russia is not Global South, it represents the Global North. But they are increasingly aligning themselves as the important partner of the Global South, while the rest of the original BRICS 5 countries have looked upon themselves as that representing the Global South. So the creation of BRICS in 2009 and the subsequent summits till now showcases the alliance of the fastest growing economies in the world and the countries from large populations of the Global South, which are aiming towards a reform of the multilateral system. And they're hoping that through their own financial institution, that is the New Development Bank, they would be able to enhance cooperation, triangular cooperations with the countries in the Global South. Now from my perspective, BRICS has been a success story, and the success is visible with the fact that a number of countries from the Global South are queuing up to register as a member of the BRICS. The last Kazan summit in 2024, you found that, which Russia hosted, it was attended by 36 leaders from across the world, and including the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And I think the fact that that number of countries are interested in joining BRICS, which was reflected in the fact that 34 countries expressed an interest in joining the group before Kazan summit, and after the summit was announced, 15 new nations joined as partner. And this is the second level of expansion. The first expansion happened in 2023, where the BRICS added 5 new partner countries in the grouping. Egypt and Ethiopia are the members from African continent. So the demand for joining BRICS is at an all-time high. Yeah, the key question is, why are the countries from Global South so much interested in joining the BRICS? What do they see in BRICS which is different? It seems I'm going to only restrict myself to the countries from African region in the larger Global South, and it seems several countries like Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Morocco, Senegal, South Sudan, Uganda, and Zimbabwe are also interested in joining. So from the Global South perspective, BRICS represents a group that is focused on shaping the global order and making it more inclusive and equitable. And it embodies the hopes, the power, and the dreams of majority of the people from the Global South, including the youth. So why was, say, BRICS Egypt interested in joining the BRICS? So my research, I find that Egypt saw BRICS membership as an opportunity for development, trade and investment. Facing high inflation issues, Egypt found BRICS agenda of de-dollarization and the use of local currencies for commodity trade appealing. Similarly, Algeria, in particular, extensively campaigned to join BRICS and perceives BRICS as an economic and political powerhouse. Ethiopian President Abiy Ahmed has highlighted that BRICS promotion of South-South cooperation is something which is making it attractive to Ethiopia. While Uganda thinks that BRICS will alter the international order in which the few nations dominate the majority at the moment. So, and finally, Nigeria believes that being multi-aligned is in its best interest. So these are the reasons which some of these countries have expressed for joining BRICS. So on the whole, I see that BRICS offers the opportunities for the countries from the global south for beneficial economic cooperation. And as most of the African countries have been engaging with their external partners for broader relations, for development assistance, but they have often expressed their frustration over the economic exploitation and stringent conditions set by the Western multilateral institutions. So as an alternate step, they think that they view that joining BRICS would be a panacea to their problems. And the African countries also view BRICS as a model for development cooperation in the South-South context. At the same time, BRICS appeals also in offering opportunities in trade, investment, and technology sharing. So the African countries also feel that through the National Development Bank, they would be able to get concessionary loans and funding. Now the NDB aims to strengthen economic partnerships within the BRICS Plus and also provide flexible financing in terms of long-term development goals for the BRICS members and also the other developing countries. It has approved several development projects in various sectors, including renewable energy, transportation, and water resources, worth around $35 billion. And these projects foster infrastructure growth and provide critical financial support to the emerging economies. Some of these projects are like the Kireta wind farm project in Kenya or the Ulaanbaatar wastewater management project in Mongolia. So I think the fact that BRICS countries represent about 46% of the world's population and over 36% of the global GDP and 40% of all the oil production and 42% of world's food production, it is a magnet which is pulling the global south towards it. It is an informal organization which has the aim to amplify the voices of the major emerging economies and that of the developing countries with the aim to offer an alternate to the Western-centered global order and the related structured institutions. Whether the global south's expectations will be met within the BRICS, only time will tell. So I'll stop here and look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you, Dr. Ruchita Beri. In fact, this is one organization where obviously a lot of interest is there. Many people, of course, used to say that this is just a talking shop, but at the same time, what we have seen in the last 2 years, 3 years, there is a huge interest of large number of countries which, for various reasons, some of them she has mentioned, they want to join BRICS. because it means the countries from the global south, they are looking for alternatives. And this could be one of the alternatives. And particularly if you look at the latest expansion which happened, this is very clearly Middle East centric, very clearly energy centric, the countries which actually joined BRICS. And many of those countries are already having transactions in bilateral transactions in local currencies. So this could actually lead to something maybe much bigger in the years to come, because most of these countries are alarmed by the weaponization of the financial system by the West. So many new developments are taking place. Thank you, Ruchita. So next speaker we have Professor Faisal Ismail. He'll be joining online. He's director, Nelson Mandela Center of Public Governance, University of Cape Town, South Africa. Dr. Ismail, please. If you could just initial intervention about 4 to 5 minutes, that will be very useful. He's not joining. All right. So if he joins, then please let me know. Then we'll get on board. So next we have Ms. Anita Prakash. She is Senior Policy Advisor, Area Indonesia. Ma'am, please. Maybe you could also introduce your organization in half a minute. That will be very useful for others as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Gulshanji. Thank you, Gulshanji, again, Chair, Ambassador Gupta-ji, DG Sachin, in absentia. Thank you for organizing this annual but a very important conference on triangular cooperation. And now that we have Dakshin also on board, so this conference, annual conference, is even more enriched and more focused, if I may say so. Coming immediately to the larger theme of the conference, that is cooperation, and today's theme, cooperation among research organizations in Global South. I bring my experience in working in an international organization which happens to be a dedicated research organization too. This is the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. This organization was created when the East Asia Summit came into being, which is the 10 countries of ASEAN and the 6 member countries, India, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Korea. Of course, US and Russia also joined later, but they are still not members of ERIA. Now, I will seek indulgence from audience and my esteemed panel to listen to a bit of the granularity that I can bring to this discussion. In that, what exactly are we looking at when in the Global South cooperation theme, the moment we talk about research organization? Now, typically, in my experience in working for policy research has been 16 years in ERIA, and before that, 6 years in Trade Ministry, looking after the East Asia division. One of the issues, major issues that we come across is that how many of our research organizations are exactly contributing, creating the knowledge for purpose of policy development, policy strengthening, policy implementation among the Global South. Now, typically, a whole bundle of research is created. How much of this gets effectively utilized is remains a moot point. And what exactly would be the best model? In my experience, it has been, Gulshanji, if I may share today, is that the volume that we create, it's both supply and demand driven, but a lot of it is not picked up because understanding the policy cycle in a diverse set of countries is something, is a kind of an expertise which cannot be generalized or spread even under cooperation theme. And why I say so, I'll come back to these bullets again later, but I urge everybody to look at the last bullet when I say, when I repeat this. We come across G7 is a group of developed countries, G20 is a group of mixed economies. Now, typically one would understand that if a triangular cooperation context can emerge, it is from a G20 scenario. But the various high principles that come out of these meetings assume that there is a kind of a general ecology prevailing among all the member countries, and more so in Global South. But working in Southeast Asia tells us that when you are working with Singapore on one hand, Japan on the other hand, you also have the LDCs in the Mekong region. You also have landlocked developing countries like Laos. You have the smaller island countries in Pacific. So we are at a point where we need to look more at finding solutions and actions through a lab and methodology, rather than generating research and creating sort of research cooperation. And why this becomes more important is visible in this particular slide. I don't know how much of this is readable, but I'm very happy to share this later also. Thank you, Gulshan ji. So this is the typical policy cycle, and research is very important at every stage of this, cycle. And aiding the government, and I don't say just the government, even private sector in the current emerging financial architecture, very little of that has been spoken yesterday and today. The emerging financial architecture is something in which the Global South will require a whole lot of capacity development for policy, and that is where our policy solutions and network-based action labs and solution labs will be very, very important. Many of us know and understand and work according to this cycle, but where exactly are we providing the solutions is something which our cooperation model should look at very carefully. I'm myself from a trade and international trade person, so my experience during RCEP, during IPEF, the GBC integration, we write volumes on this, but believe me, many of us present here understand the whole history of RCEP, and more recently IPEF. We research organizations wrote volumes on the benefits of RCEP. Very little was done on managing the risks emerging out of RCEP. Now Bangladesh wants to be a member of RCEP. Sri Lanka has applied for membership. What are we doing as research organizations to tell them about the risk mitigation that will may emerge when they join RCEP? For that matter, what did we really offer to India, how to manage its risks in joining RCEP, or in its prospective joining of RCEP, if and when it happens. So research for the Global South has a lot of ups. I myself work on regional integration, trade integration, carbon neutrality. But when we are making the policy choices, and here I say we, I mean policymakers and other state actors, when we are making our policy choices, the options available to us, I'm not even going into the policy cycle stage of implementation and then making modifications. And mind you, these choices will emerge in every sector, whether it is international trade, whether it is energy, whether it is your climate action. These policy option choices will emerge at every stage depending on your level of development, and that is why solution labs then become very important, which is not very different from research, but they are more targeted at which cycle of policy we are working at. So risk mitigation as a focus of research cooperation becomes very, very important in any growth strategy and development strategy. I think I will stop here, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions which emerge from this. Thank you. Thank you, Gulshanji.
Thank you, thank you, Anitaji, for very useful example from your organization, and also the importance of policy-focused research. And what you have also very clearly mentioned, that a lot of work, a lot of capacity needs to be created within the Global South to the kind of role which Global South would like to play in the international organization, or the development of different kind of international organization, what we really need in the Global South. Thank you so much for very clear presentation, ma'am. Next speaker we have Mr. Rafael de Moraes Balderrite, International Cooperation Presidential Office, IPEA, Brazil. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, everyone. First of all, I salute the co-chairs and IRS colleagues who invited us to be here today. I have a presentation that should be ready soon. I'm from the Institute of Applied Economic Research from Brazil. Thanks a lot. I'll just grab the... Sorry about that. I am Rafael Baldrighi from the Institute for Applied Economic Research, IPEA. We have a long-standing cooperation and partnership with IRIS, which I thank for an invitation to be here. And specifically, I'll be talking about Global South knowledge systems and how think tanks can influence policy within international organizations and the state. First of all, who we are. IPEA, the Institute for Applied Economic Research from Brazil, is a government-led think tank founded in 1964, the same year as ITEC, the Indian Cooperation Agency, which is a great coincidence. We just turned 60 years old now. We're a public institution linked to the Brazilian Ministry of Planning and Budget. We're headquartered in Brasilia, the capital of the country. And our main goals are to evaluate and propose essential public policies and programs to improve the development of Brazil, to assist decision-making within the Brazilian federal government, and to contribute to the improvement of the national and international debate related to, well, development endeavors and so on. We have different study divisions in several fields, so if you want to cooperate with us, some of you already do, feel free to talk to me after the event or send me an email, okay? Well, getting to my presentation itself on how think tanks can influence foreign policy, the public debate, specifically regarding the institutionalization of knowledge systems in the Global South and how they can cooperate and influence international organizations and other multilateral fora. Think tanks, and think tankers as well, even government-affiliated ones like the Institute for Applied Economic Research, can and should propose new ideas to decision makers. Why? Well, we are not public policymakers. I myself, I am a public servant, a bureaucrat, but I am not the person elaborating policy in Brazil. At IPEA, we don't do that. We evaluate it, and we produce knowledge to foster dialogue to inform national and international policy. Thus, it is our mission to be like the critical consciousness of the state. And this is valid for think tanks all around the world, engaging in debates on public policies and strategic decisions. In summary, the analogy can be how to break through bureaucratic silos on collective thinking from think tankers, from academia, to peers, state and IO hermetic bubbles that sometimes are inaccessible for the civil society and so on. Thus, as think tanks, we need to bridge, to create bridges between academia, civil society, the government, to introduce new ideas, to introduce critical thinking in policy, specifically here foreign policy, as we are talking about IOs and Global South knowledge systems. And how do we do that? Well, many of you and us at home at IPEA, we produce different recommendations to decision makers, to Sherpas, from the G20, from the BRICS and other people-to-people mechanisms, giving access as well to civil society and academia. Last year, during Brazil's presidency of the G20, our government instituted the first social G20, which was open to civil society and other groups that are not state-centric. And in this fora, in this platform, be it international organizations or other gathering of countries, dialogue forums, etc., think tanks' recommendations can and will strengthen multilateralism and global governance. The key word that is highlighted over there is legitimacy. If we pass on knowledge, if you create democratic mechanisms for the production of knowledge in the Global South, will give more legitimacy to multilateral institutions and the decision that IOs and the state take regarding foreign policy. Okay, so whatever you think, whatever the analogy you want, either pierce the bubble of the bureaucracy of the state and IOs, or plant the seed of knowledge, critical thinking, and new ideas to policy makers and decision makers, or be the mosquito bite that will carry the vector of how think tankers, scholars, academics can influence the decisions on policy making, especially in foreign policy. Here I bring three concrete examples that many of you have engaged in the past and participated at IPEA in Brazil. Last year we were the presidents of G20, so we co-hosted as the host country the Think 20, T20 platform in Brazil. This year Brazil is the president of the BRICS Dialogue Forum. So we are co-hosting the BRICS Think Tank Council, which produces different reports to Sherpas and to the civil society about policy recommendation for the BRICS countries. Actually, in 20 days in Brasilia, we'll be hosting the academic forum of the BRICS countries. Maybe some of you will be there as well. And we are part of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, specifically the South-South Galaxy that was presented yesterday in this very conference room. And many countries in the Global South participate in those mechanisms. And here, to end my presentation, I bring you, the two QR codes. You can access our T20 communique recommendations for last year's G20 engagement group, which IPEA co-hosted. And this year we are organizing the BTTC, the BRICS Think Tank Council. You can also find our recommendations to the Brazilian Sherpa, which you see in the picture, that was delivered about a month ago, okay? And in the picture you can see our president, Mrs. Luciana Servo, who could not be here today, so I'm representing her. She sends lots of regards to RIS, the Ministry of External Relations of India, and feel free to check on what we have recommended for the different platforms and people-to-people mechanisms. Thank you, muito obrigado. This is my email, my LinkedIn. The WhatsApp is out of date, so don't bother. But Feel free to contact me by email, by LinkedIn. I ran out of business cards, but I'll be glad to discuss with you whatever subject you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balbright. Thank you for introducing the kind of work your think tank is doing and the importance of research work in the Global South and building Global South international organizations. Next speaker we have Mr. Abdesalam Saad Jaldi, International Relations Specialist from the Policy Center from the New South, Morocco. I'm really happy to welcome you. I have been to your country many, many times. We used to have every 2 years conference in Dakhla, where many economists used to meet every 2 years. Over to you, Mr. Jaldi.
All right. So, good morning, you all. Firstly, I would like to thank REF for the invitation. It's the first time I visit India, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you and to exchange with you on the current crisis of multilateralism as viewed from the Global South. So, about the subject of the conversation of this morning, I think it's important to understand what about the foundation of the current crisis of multilateralism. Personally, I think the current crisis of contemporary multilateralism is due to two factors. Firstly, the ambiguity surrounding the Bretton Woods system. Secondly, the emergence of two distinct models of multilateralism in the aftermath of the Second World War. And thirdly, the changing nature of international society. So, about the first things, the Bretton Woods system, the problem that the main international economic institution established in the aftermath of the Second World War, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, has evolved from post-war development institution for developed countries into aid institution for development countries. In this context, the International Monetary Fund, for example, has provided emergency foreign exchange to the countries of the Global South, and the World Bank, for example, has supported some projects of development in those countries. However, both institution has imposed a strict condition, and sorry, I don't know. How can we pass it? Okay, sorry. Right. Oops. So, I will continue. So, right, that. Okay. So, however, about the Bretton Woods institution, as I have explained, both institution has imposed the strict condition on developing countries, and in particular, aligned the loan to the interest of the donor. The system was underpinned the two-gap model, highlighting developing country shortage in capital and foreign exchange. About the second thing, the question of international negotiation, as explained, two models of multilateralism has emerged in the aftermath of the Second World War. The first one is represented by in particular the institution of Bretton Woods, where especially decision-making power reflects in particular the realities of post-World War global order, favoring countries like United States, like the countries of European Union, rather than the growing economy of today, like India or like Brazil. The second one, represented by some institutions like the World Trade Organization, like the United Nations Convention of Climate Change, operate in more democratic process with with equal voting right between state members. However, this type of organization is face important challenge due in particular to North-South divide, which are managed in particular throughout the principle of differential treatment, traitement différencié in French, which principle which recognize the legacy of colonialism and the historical inequalities. About the third factor, about the third factor, the changing nature of international society, I think the problem is that until today, the contemporary international law is always governed by some norm, by some regulatory instrument dated from the aftermath of the Second World War, like, for example, the current composition of the Security Council of the United Nations, the power of General Assembly, the voice and the place of the countries of the Global South in Bretton Woods institution. Even though the society, the current international society has completely changed. Consequently, the failure of contemporary international law to adapt with the new realities of international societies, as well as the challenge posed by the fourth industrial revolution, explain on the one hand the inability to contemporary international law to address effectively the new threat against peace and international security, like the health crisis, like the climate crisis, like the asymmetric war, and on the other hand, the return of the war as we observe today in Ukraine, in Palestine, etc. In this context, I think the shortcoming is illustrated by the current crisis of international humanitarian law, and also by the growing complexities surrounding the issues of refugees. About the first things, the Fourth Convention of 1949 about the Convention of Geneva regarding the humanitarian international law is completely inadaptable with the characteristic of contemporary war and with the characteristic of armed conflicts. And the second one, the problem of refugees, is surrounded by the problem of climate refugees. However, this notion is being not yet recognized by the international law or covered by the Convention of Geneva concerning the protection of refugees. Indeed, the only instrument that address the question of climate refugees exists in Africa within the framework of the Kampala Convention of 2008 regarding the internal displacement in Africa. So now, what we can do exactly about the future of the multilateralism, what the countries of the global South can do exactly. I think firstly, the political pillar. About the political pillar, don't forget that the United Nations is not a single organization. The United Nations is in particular an archipelago of organizations. Among the system, some organizations work relatively well. But the problem is where is exactly in Security Council of United Nations, the body responsible for maintaining peace and international security. So what we can do, I think on the one hand, introducing adding a new member as a permanent member in Security Council of United Nations. I think India and Brazil deserve today more than ever their place in Security Council of United Nations, as a lot of specialists consider India and Brazil as spokesmen of the countries of developing countries in multilateral forum. About Africa, I think it doesn't exist until today any countries able to represent Africa in all its diversity. Maybe it will be more appropriate to establish a system of rotation between African countries about this issue. However, adding new member, adding India, Brazil, and Africa as a permanent member of Security Council in United Nations, I think it's not enough to regulate and to balance the global governance. It's also in the same time important to regulate and to democratize the use of the right of veto, maybe by requiring major power to justify the use of the right of veto. I think Liechtenstein has already proposed this form of proposition, and this amendment could be could be expanded not only to require major power in Security Council of United Nations to justify the use of the right of veto, but also to allow debate. In the same time, General Assembly of United Nations, I think she deserves more power, as this institution represents the global diversity more than the Security Council of United Nations. About the peace, the second thing, the peace operation, I think it's important to improve the effectiveness of peace building and peacekeeping operation of United Nations by including the state observer and also the troop military contributor in the decision making process. Thirdly, about the human rights pillar, in international human rights law, we distinguish between fourth family, the first family, the right of the first generation, the civil and political right, the second family, the economic and social right, the third family, the environmental right, and today we speak about the right of the fourth generation, essentially the digital and technological rights. As you know, the new technologies can have and already having a profound impact in our society, from agriculture, from healthcare to education, etc. However, as United Nations General Secretary stated in 2018, this technology can be used to malicious end or have negative consequences. And in this context, I think the artificial intelligence technologies embodies this duality, maybe more than any other emerging technology today. Reason why it's important to balance between technological innovation and ethics. That's why, for example, European Union has tried to do recently with the adoption of the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act, the first legislation around the world trying to regulate the use of artificial intelligence. And fourthly, promote the North-South logical of cooperation. For example, throughout the social protection which constitutes the poor parent of the consensus of Washington. Also, by favoring the industrialization, I think the experience of Japan with the country of ASEAN could serve as example. Also, the new technologies, according a report prepared by International Monetary Fund in 2023. This report affirmed that the new technologies can increase disparities between North and South. Why? Because the new technologies, and in particular the artificial intelligence technologies, could shift the investment toward the countries of the North, where the automation is already established. Reason why the International Monetary Fund has invited the countries of the South to review their model of production and promote the digital and technology education. Don't forget, for example, in Africa, 40% of population haven't any information about digital and technology education, and only 40% of African population have access to internet, against 87% in European Union and 92% in United States. And finally, the migration by promoting a new framework of migration, favoring the complementarities rather than the blending. Thank you so much. If you have any question, observation, don't hesitate.
Thank you, Mr. Jaldi, for very, very comprehensive presentation. Start with the genesis of the international crisis, and then, you also not just only provided the background, but also very specific solutions from the UNSC to many, many other areas. Thank you so much. We really learned a lot from your presentation. So last but not least presentation we have from Professor Naval K. Paswan. He's the head of Department of Peace and Conflict Studies and Management, Sikkim University in India. Professor Paswan, 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Cheers. So since I am the last speaker and giving less time to complete or conclude, I will take entire debate towards the security and peace, because we know that global South region includes Latin America, Africa, few Middle East countries, Asia and Oceania, and the global South is not a formal bloc. India is one of the leading and prominent of Global South, India, our Prime Minister initiated and hosted two Voice of Global South Summit in 2023, bringing together more than 100 countries to share their perspectives and prioritize as a common platform. So when we talk about Global South trilateral cooperation, we should also understand that Global South lacks adequate representation in the United Nations Security Councils where decisions on peace and security are made. Why I am discussing about security and peace? Because most of the resources are diverted towards maintaining the peace and security in the region, and SDP suffers. So the Global South faces significant challenges in international organization due to many factors, including underrepresentation, high debt, climate vulnerability, and global governance issues. Addressing this issue, a commitment to reforms and more equitable and inclusive global order we need. We know that world is becoming less peaceful because the economic impact of violence in the global economic is quantifiable, and when you quantify the economic impact of violence in the global order, including Global South countries, then we quantify that in 2023, it accounted more than 19.1 trillion US dollar in purchasing power parity terms, which is 13.5% of total global GDP. So this is the estimates when we deal with the peace and security component in the Global South region. And with more violent conflict now than at any point of time in the world after Second World War, we need to build a just and sustainable peace which has never been more urgent, both as a moral and practical imperatives. So after looking at the recent trends, 5 more principles for conducting effective peace building is needed for institutional innovations for improving global and regional organizations' efforts to better prepare and present and respond to the outbreak of violent conflict in fragile states. And the Global South is having many fragile states and countries in the region. And these are the 5 core principles are addressing root causes of violent conflict within this Global South, local capacity development within the region, just and meaningful inclusion, accountability and transparency, then solidarity and social justice. So when you talk about peace and security in the region, then we must address these 5 principles within the region to make this region as a peaceful region in the world. And all the local and regional stakeholders are supposed to cooperate, coordinate, and bring a new platform where we can represent in the United Nations Security Council with one voice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Paswan. So we have now, the statements, initial statements from all our speakers. Before I hand over to Dr. Arvind Gupta, just 1 or 2 points I think I learned through this, and then we can follow the discussion. One is that obviously there are a huge number of issues which are facing the world today. Many of we have been discussing since yesterday, but without the intervention very active intervention of the Global South, things are going to be much more difficult. So the Global South has to really raise to this occasion, despite all the differences and issues which we face in the Global South. And it's not just only building few international organizations, you also have to set new norms. It's not just building something. Because if you are trying to just do exactly the same thing which has been done so far, then we will not be able to achieve much. Even in BRICS, what you were saying, even with certain things which we created, the idea was to create alternative norms. And this is what really the challenge is, what kind of alternative norms we are looking, and there you need solid work, solid research, and all the inputs from the international think tanks, from the Global South, and also from the North. What alternatives really we are looking, where the Global South has to find solutions of all the kind of problems we had, security issues or economic problem, climate issues, etc. Now, Dr. Arvind Gupta, so you can, have your own kind of views since then, and then of course, if there is a time, we have something around maybe 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
You can have maybe interactive, but maybe I would like your views also before you can open the discussion.
So let's plan for about 15 minutes. I just take 4-5 minutes to just make a couple of points, and then we'll request our panelists, I think, to elaborate on some of the one or two points that you have raised, like for instance norms. Now, it's clear that in the new order, the Global South, there is a lot of expectation from Global South, actually. The expectations are rising. There are also, because the world is changing and the dominance of the West is now being challenged, and the inadequacies of the Bretton Woods institutions and the multilateralism, etc., crisis and multilateralism we have talked about. But can Global South come up to the expectation of, as you said, giving some new norms, addressing the very serious problems of peace and conflict that you mentioned, or climate change that was mentioned, poverty elevation, etc. That is one question. Where is that thinking going to happen? In research institutions? You mentioned the policy cycles, the need for research in the entire, because ultimately it is really what you put on the table and whether you actually address the problems. And of course there are many models, as was mentioned. I think our colleague from Argentina mentioned, and also from Brazil. So many models are there. But this is really a kind of this question of speed and scale that was mentioned. So I think there are big challenges, and there is a need to sit down, and that's why this Dakshin, for instance, and other such organizations can play a big role in developing and putting this whole huge debate that is taking place in so many fora, whether it's G20, whether it is BRICS, whether it is so many other forums. But it must now be concretized and some clear, otherwise a solution should be given. Otherwise it is really too many ideas at too many places, and the cohesion and coherence that is missing. That is, I think, one. The second is what would be the relationship between global North and South. As was mentioned, in BRICS you have global North also. And if we get into this North-South thing, which in the earlier, it derailed the whole development thing. So maybe a new alternative conceptual framework is required in which North and South can cooperate. And BRICS is probably one such. Or the Russians have been talking about what you also mentioned, the world majority or the global majority. So I think there has to be some kind of a standardization of some terminology, some concepts, so that we know what we are talking about. Otherwise, we are all talking in many different areas. That's my second point. The third is I want to raise two specific issues, two specific examples. This is coming from the trilateral cooperation. Now, trilateral cooperation, as you understand, is that there is beneficiary country, there is a pivotal country, and then there is a facilitating entity. Could be a country, could be an organization, international organizations like the World Bank or etc. No, but I also want to, which was not mentioned, in 2004, IBSA was started, India, Brazil, South Africa dialogue. And I think it was a very good model. Somehow it has not delivered, and I do not know when the last summit was held. I believe the 5 summits were held, but then there was a big gap, and probably, I don't know when the last summit was held, I couldn't find that information. But I think the model was very good. India, Brazil, South Africa contributed some fund, I think $1 million each at that point of time. And then this fund was managed by a UN entity, and the projects were identified in several countries in Asia and Africa. I remember some in Palestine, and I remember some in Africa, and perhaps in some Latin America also. And these were small projects, and they identified the needs of the local needs, etc. And in fact, some very good areas like science and technology, even nanotechnologies were mentioned, poverty alleviation, etc. I think that was a good trilateral model, but that I do not know, because geopolitics perhaps, BRICS came up, and BRICS all the 3 countries were members of BRICS, so that overshadowed them. But perhaps some new models need to be thought through. But I think IBSA is, to my mind, it was a good model, but many people think it was a failure. But that is more for geopolitics. The last point I want to make is about, when you go for Global South international organizations or trilateral cooperations, etc., we can make any number of geometries. Bring 3 people together and start having, and you call it a trilateral, but that is not going to work. The most important things, I think, 3, 4 things that we need to keep in mind. One is the design of these institutions, the design of these trilaterals. That, I think, is very important. If you do not design them properly, and that's why research becomes very important, the policy cycles become very important. So how do we design them? The second point is of the resources. Without resources, I think we are not going to, everything will ultimately fail. So who is going to bring in the resources? No, there is often a, okay, let's look to the north, let's get some resources from there, some organization in Italy, some organization in, etc. So if they do that, or international organizations like World Bank, etc., but then this question of agenda comes in. They always come with agenda. So I think this is IBSA model where the 3 countries, even though the resources are small, they got together. I think the nature, the color of funding is going to be very important. So that also has to be kept in mind. And I think the third thing is the point about data, research. This is research, data, that is very important. Monitoring is very important. I mean, all of you know this. I don't have to belabor the point. But I think when we make these institutions, not enough thought is given to these aspects. And that's why many of them fail. They do away. I was seeing some data which Ruchita had provided me, that there are about 1,000 trilateral arrangements which are right now working, and they came up in up to, say, 2000 to 2022 or something. And this is some OECD data. Now again, I was reluctant to use this data because this is OECD data. I mean, we should have some Global South data. But that's the point. That is where our shortcomings are. We don't have, and these we don't need to. Sorry? Yeah, I'm coming to that. Well, I think this gentleman is very keen to make his points. Please welcome.
Concrete example of pharmaceutical industry. India, Brazil, South Africa, IBSA, the example you took, it offered us an opportunity for cooperation, technical cooperation, investment cooperation.
Can you give some specific example?
Sir, I'm giving sir pharmaceutical industry, sir.
Example.
Pharmaceutical industry is one industry in India, we're serving the regulated markets, but India, Brazil, South Africa are different. They are not the markets of European Union and United States. But the Indian industry is only interested in exports, not really investment cooperation and technical cooperation. Finally, you require carriers for triangular cooperation or IPSA type of cooperation. What is their motive? I think if we can analyze that in the policy cycle, what Anita was pointing out, see, at one time we were guided by collective self-reliance, selective delinking. What are these today ideas? In the new geopolitical developments, I would like to hear from the panel here that what are those concepts and the principles which should be guiding either triangular cooperation or South-South cooperation or SSTC itself.
Would you like to take this?
Thank you very much. But before I answer your point, I would like to add to what Ambassador Gupta said about resources. And when ERIA was set up, it was set up with the consensus or the decision of all the 16 East Asia Summit member countries. And a whole 2-year process of establishing this research organization had taken place, which was also the precursor of CPIA, which later morphed into RCEP. But 99% of the fund was coming from Japan. Now, typically, the short answer is that unless governments make a commitment for funding in these kind of initiatives, or at least they take the lead, it will be very difficult. I mean, financial institutions are welcome. Private initiatives are also welcome, especially when more research is needed on fintech, regulatory coherence. Fintech cannot be a success without regulatory coherence or convergence between different countries and regions. And that is why government and private sectors. So different facets of cooperation require different models, but governments leading the process or at least monitoring. When Japan decided to fund ERIA, Kuroda-san, who later became governor of central bank after ADB, when I had introduced myself, I said, I'm from ERIA, Japan gives most of it. He said, why are you sounding so apologetic about Japan's funding? The important thing is, how are the funds being administered? How are they being utilized? How are they being governed? That is to say, the governing board's behavior. Those things become very important. To your question, sir, I agree with you that industry-specific, investment-specific initiatives are also very important in these programs. Many a times we have found ourselves as sort of advocating for investments in several of our member countries. That does not, on the contrary, such cooperations actually can act also like an honest broker in, it's a kind of a part diplomatic mission, part research mission. What you are saying, what you are advocating comes from your research conviction that this kind of, when ERIA advocates investments in India's, growing sectors in which integration with ASEAN is coming up, then our intervention, our advocacy then is research-based. So we become very honest brokers in this kind of a conversation. So the role for think tanks, research organization, solution labs then becomes that of an honest broker also, part diplomatic also. So advocating for investments, investment opportunities remains an important role. I may not have answered your question in full, but I do see a valid point here, which can actually be fulfilled in these initiatives.
Okay.
So,
let's take from here one question.
Thank you very much. I commend really the speakers. Excellent presentation, really, from all the panel members. It's it has been a great learning experience and also a lot of insights. And
can you bit louder, please? Just
I just commended the panel and the excellent presentations. I am sure that we all agree that the global geopolitical scene is different than what we have witnessed coming out of 1945 or 55 even. Things have changed drastically now. We have, in my view, to look again together. May I say, we have to reinterpret Bandung and to look at ways how can we address together the current challenges, which are very different than we have seen before. Of course, we have to ensure our own sovereignty on our development agendas and strategies. Another thing is looking at our own priorities. Thirdly, we have to reform the global governance. Abdussalam, you mentioned the Security Council reform. We have to have more part in the decision-making in these areas. We don't at the moment, unfortunately. The IMF, World Bank, WTO, and others. But the key word is our solidarity. Can we really have common positions? Can we realize the challenges that we have to address together and have a coherent, as you rightly said, Ambassador Gupta, a coherent position and policy to address them? This is the real question, really. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's been a really interesting discussion and expression of different points of view. But in the practice that I've had in working in South-South cooperation, in working with different partners, I find that sometimes maybe we overthink matters when we want to have a strict framework, put certain types of collaboration and cooperation in a box, as it were, and label it. I found that what really works in my experience is to understand what we have as an overall framework for cooperation. What we want to do is to make sure that the collaboration that we're having embodies certain key principles. Once we've got that down, formulating the way in which we are going to go about it is something that sometimes is really context dependent. If I'm working, what I know is that I'm working in agriculture, I'm working in sustainable food systems transformation, and I'm looking at supporting the rural marginalized communities. That for me is my framework. And so when I'm talking with the ABCs of this world, or I'm talking with the Indonesias of this world, my interest is to ensure that whatever area, whatever thematic area we are focusing on, we'll look at these basic principles. Sometimes maybe we want too much to put things in a clean basket so that we can say, okay, this is why it isn't working. And there's a point to be made for that. But I really see, you start a pilot, you go ahead with the project, and you actually learn by doing, because every context is different. You cannot say that what applied in the case of Ghana and Nigeria is also valid for South Africa and Indonesia. So I would recommend that when we look at think tanks supporting us in providing a normative framework, we look at basic principles, and then we support one another to make sure that we implement what it is that we know, but we also have our own differences, and that's perfectly okay. Thank you.
Very brief, because yes, sir. Less than 50 seconds. Dr. Daniel, Senior Advisor, USI, United Service Institution. Coming to Morocco front, 90% of the UN peacekeeping stationed in Sub-Saharan, except Middle East. Now, with regards to this one, the troop contributing countries, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Senegal, Ghana, Ethiopia, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Now, when you look into all these countries, and 95% of the peacekeeping forces in Africa, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Burundi, Senegal, every single country do have a political interest on the countries where they get deployed. Unlike in India, this is number one. Number two, Indian Army is the only one, it's professionally, with professional integrity, not only get deployed without political interest. Number two, it also understanding the protecting the civilians, particularly women, children, and elder. India is the only country deployed all women contingent to Liberia earlier, and within a successful roadmap, we have already redeployed in Abyei, most critical conflict zones within a Tigrayan, Eritrean, Ethiopian, and also Ogaden and other non-Arab, non-African sector. Okay. Now, India is in a successful model. Indian peacekeeping is a successful model. However, I agree your point. Unless in Global South country, they're in the UN Security Council, they cannot set the mandate for that particular one. That has to be relooked from the peacekeeping perspective. Question to Ruchidra ma'am.
We don't have...
I'll finish this one. 15 seconds.
But she won't be able to answer it because I'm going to close it now.
$200 million been given to Uganda by Chinese 2015. It is supposed to pay one day before the collection. For instead of collecting the fund, they come to take the Entebbe airport. Rockets fired. Rather than going to the airport, Chinese came to the belt. Now, same thing with Ethiopia. Now, China...
Let's have it on the T, please.
That's last statement. Africa looking into BRICS as an alternate or used by BRI as a strategic...
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much. Manuel Gonzalo from Argentina. Coming from the south, all the presentations are really interesting, related to Global South, Bandung, and BRICS, this discussion. But India is really involved in the Indo-Pacific platform. So I would like to hear from the panel how BRICS cohabit with Indo-Pacific, and if there is any tension there, if you could say some words on this. Thank you.
Okay, I think we really don't have the time to take more questions. And maybe you could just 30 seconds if you want to say something about this peacekeeping. And Ruchita, what's 30 seconds to you? Just say.
No, about the peacekeeping, about your question, I'm totally agree with you. I know India is a major contributor in peace building and peacekeeping operation in Africa, notably in RDC and South Sudan. However, what the problem about not only the question of the peace building or peacekeeping operation, but the problem I think today a lot of several countries in the global south would like to establish new framework of relation with their counterparts in the global north. However, I think the problem is that the fragmentation of the global south complicate the thing for them. Reason why I think the countries of the global south need to unify more their effort if they would like to shape the future of international societies. Otherwise, so what they need exactly? I think, for example, if we take into consideration the experience of Africa needs today to develop a new model of development, converging with the needs and the realities of New Africa and of the New World, and also within the framework of African Union. I think the countries of Africa have to choose the model that they would like to see for African Union. African Union today, it's not a super organization like the European Union, is intergovernmental organization, and at the same time, lots of countries within the framework of African Union prefer to ratify the test regarding the soft law rather than the hard law. For example, about the Lome Charter on Maritime Security, one of the most important tests in maritime security adopted not only in Africa but around the world. Only 3 countries of African Union among the 54 countries of African Union has adopted this charter. It's Senegal, Benin and Togo. Reason why I think the countries of Africa need, yes, to rethink their model of regional integration if they would like, yes, to shape seriously the future of the world and contribute in the future of global governance.
Thank you very much. I think we'll have to close the session here, otherwise we'll be getting into the next session, and that's not very polite. There is a tea there after this. I think you can have some discussion around the thing. You might like to.
No, there's also, they want to felicitate the speakers, yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's give a hand to all.
Thank you so much for all the speakers and the participants and delegates who are sitting in front of me. I would now like to request Professor Gulshan Sachdeva sir to felicitate all our speakers on the dais. I would like to request Ambassador Arvind Gupta to felicitate Professor Gulshan Sachdeva sir. All the speakers can come in front for the group photo, please. And Nisha, if someone is online, can we have them on screen? Okay. Thank you so much. Dear delegates, now we will break for a tea break, very short tea break, and assemble again at 12 p.m. for our validatory session of the conference. Thank you so much.
request everyone to please settle down. We are about to begin the valedictory session. You can bring your tea and take your seats. Amur Ravi, Secretary Economic Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. And he would also be co-chairing this session along with Mr. Pradeep Mehta, Secretary General Cuts International India. We also have our Director General, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, with us. And distinguished speakers for this session includes Dr. Dushni Virakund, Dr. Poshraj Pandey, Dr. Carlos Correa, and Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy, and the vote of thanks would be presented by Dr. Sushil Kumar. Over to you, sir. Yes.
Well, good afternoon to all, and let me at the outset convey my deep gratitude, honor, and privilege to RIS for organizing this valedictory session and inviting me for this. I think for the last day and a half conference, which is so intensive and exhaustive, many of you sharing your ideas would have enriched all the participants, and participants, not just participants, but also policymakers. Let me take this opportunity to also thank Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, his colleague Sabyasachi Saha, and the Chairman RIS, Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma, the co-panelists and distinguished panelists that are there going to talk after this, and ladies and gentlemen. You know, after a day and a half session, and inaugurated by His Excellency the President of Paraguay yesterday, and very intensive and exhaustive sessions that you had, very relevant topics that are there, I feel I don't have much to add, honestly speaking. So it's like something like, you know, what can you preach to the converted? But let me throw some ideas. You know, the definition of the global south, you cannot really put it in words. It's a very amorphous word, a coin, which constituting across the spectrum about 150 countries. I don't know the exact precise number, but that seems to be growing and fluctuating. But within that group, you have about nearly 1/3 of it is the least developed countries. And then the 100 countries loosely configured, you know, low-income countries to middle-income countries, and then emerging economies that are there. So what is fundamental to all these countries has been the development. And that development became a priority in the policy of all economies, not just now, but I think 1960s, ever since they became independent post-Second World War. So the South-South cooperation became the bedrock of foreign policy of many countries. Now, the idea of cooperating amongst the countries of the global South, you know, it sometimes gives the impression that the South will have to find solutions for themselves. That may have been relevant in the post-Second World War aftermath immediately, because there were clash of interests, there were divergent of interests, there were extractionist policies, the mercantilist policies, the neo-colonial policies, perhaps prevented from the South to be able to have a more elaborative development goals aligned or in partnership with the West and the North in particular. So in that sense, the Global South and the South-South cooperation particularly, has been extremely effective and achieved quite significantly. There's no doubt about that. And in interdependent world in today, the world has evolved much since then. But development continues to be central to all of us. People have become aspirational. In the political economies and democracies, the demand for delivery from the leadership is ever growing. So countries have to be more innovative to find solutions. But within the global south, few countries have been able to leapfrog in development. That's the emerging economies, and been able to find solutions for themselves. Of course, that cooperation among the south still enduring and is able to find quite significantly. But we also need to see development in a more comprehensive way. And how do we accelerate development in the real sense of it? You need capital, you need technology, you need skills, combination of factors you would need. And that's where I like bringing the angle of the north in the south. And the paradigm of development will need to have that input and that shift. Very consciously, we have to understand how important is the triangular cooperation that this conference is talking about, bringing to focus and light. Let's look at the imperativeness of the triangular cooperation. The world has changed quite significantly since the post-COVID-19. It made many countries weak, debilitating, and highly indebted. But the solutions that came thereafter are still not able to really take the countries out of this abyss that they seem to have fallen. The indebtedness. G20 tried to some extent. The DSSI, the Debt Service Sustainable Initiative under the Common Framework. But that is not a solution, actually. It's postponing the pain. In that sense, the indebtedness continues to be a major pullback on the development parameters and aspirations of the countries. Look at the SDGs, for example. It's a very, very clear indication that the Global South is much behind in their objectives in fulfilling the SDGs. And they're just about 5 years from the deadline. But in terms of the fulfillment of SDGs, much behind that. Look at the debt of the developing countries. $11.4 trillion, and this is 2023 data. $11.4 trillion is the developing countries' debt. And they're servicing $1.4 trillion every year in terms of the servicing of the debt alone. And look at that within that context, and let me bring in the LDC servicing is about $40 billion per year. So what it means also is that while you are servicing the debt, you are not able to leapfrog. You're not able to execute your development projects, the infrastructure project that actually fuel economic growth. So your health, education, and most importantly, the programs of the government that cater to the needs of the people, they get pushed back. And the borrowing costs would definitely be high for developing countries with that high levels of indebtedness, which means the credit ratings will not be able to lend enough for them to be able to work on their own infrastructure program. Let's look at then the solutions. What do we do in this kind of a dilemma? In my view, the infrastructure projects are very critical for growth. And one way of doing it is actually public-private partnership. We need to be innovative to be able to execute the PPP projects in the developing world. Railways, ports, airports, all these are doable. But beyond perhaps on the lines of credit, we have to graduate from the lines of credit. India has extended lines of credit quite a large number of countries in the global south. We have a commitment of $32 billion. We have done it in our own region, South Asia. We have done it in Africa, and some in the Central Asia, and very few in the Caribbean region. But both grants and lines of credit have its own limitations. But so if we have to accelerate on the infrastructure projects, we have to look at public-private partnership models. Energy and development is an interlinked concept, and very well known. And energy and economic growth are also interlinked in the same way. But today, in the energy and the climate change context, you have to be innovative in looking at tapping the renewable energy. The fossil fuel will still be expensive, but easy to do because existing networks, energy units are already committed to it. But I think we can take a shift if we are innovative in bringing the renewable energy. The solar energy can be effective, economical, and efficient for countries in the global south. In the same breath, I'd like to bring in agriculture. It cannot be that the food security has to be mortgaged to another country. It looks very nice that India is able to provide food when it is required, but we have to look at how do we diversify the food security in the context of the global south, enabling them to produce their own food crops in the global south space, Africa, Latin America, where the edible land is so vast and fresh water is so immense. It is possible. But what is lacking is entrepreneurship. So we should be able to look at creating a food security within those regions. Value-added manufacturing is another area we'll have to work about. The traditional concept of moving goods across the borders is somewhat outdated. We have to look at more value-added. Countries would be immensely benefited through a value-added manufacturing because it creates jobs and it also generates revenue locally. Institution building is another area where I'd like to bring focus on. We are doing traditionally capacity building. I know there has been a session on iTech. We have a very strong institution, both RIS and Dakshin, which does regular capacity building programs. And that number is growing. But time has also come to see a linkage between what capacities we provide in India and the local institutions that are being set up in different parts of the world. That linkage is even more enduring. We have to create skills locally so that they're able to drive the economies locally and they're able to sustain that economic activity for a long time to come. The item that I have and India is doing in the idea of the digital public infrastructure. These are low-cost solutions successfully implemented in India, but that may not be a solution across the board. It has to be customized to the local needs. But in my view, this can be a game changer. Because in the digital world, increasingly in the 21st century, the Internet of Things will play a big role. We have to adapt to these new technologies. And in my view, the sooner we make our people and youth adapt to the digital technologies is better. Let's look at the way forward from here. Orientation is important in the way the businesses see opportunities outside. We have traditionally been looking at bilateral context, businesses doing bilateral projects. But I think if you want to do mega projects across borders in another part of the world, you need to look at the ability to do in a collaborative way. And that's where comes in the trilateral cooperation. We have experimented successfully in a very low concept context and programs, both with GTJet, with JICA, AFPD, the US aid. In many ways we have done, but I think the scale has been very limited. Limited to capacity building, pilot projects, but if we have to do mega projects and big projects, we have to be looking more beyond this pilot project concept, which is actually collaborations. But that requires orientation. Because when you do projects in collaboration, there's more efficiency, there's more competitiveness, and more enduring. And technology will flow in, investments will flow in, capital will flow in. So in the days to come, in the paradigm of the North-South, we would like to see greater collaboration with GTJet, JETRO, KOTRA, APD, and many other bodies that are actually interested to do projects like this. But we haven't had a proper discussion of the North-South dialogue. Perhaps I'll request RIS at some stage to bring in this conference of similar nature, involving the North as well. The blended financing is another thing. Finance is not a problem in my view. If there is a project that is economically viable, that has great value, money will chase it. Trillions of dollars are already waiting to be tapped. The pension funds In my view, it is about $60 trillion almost, which is waiting to be tapped. Green funds that are available for projects that you can do in the green energy space. All this requires a broader understanding, and you also have to look at risk mitigation, collaterals, securitization, and banks being able to understand each other and able to respect or honor the LCs and the banking transaction space, but that still we haven't reached there, and there is a lot of discussion required. In a similar way, developing capital markets and bond markets in the global south has to evolve to an extent that countries are able to raise their own capital, to be able to do projects in their own national currency. That brings me to another idea of being able to do trade in national currencies. The limitations of availability of dollar and hard currency has actually put a lot of gaps, an obstacle to doing trade in the global south. You need to have a dollar to be able to do. That means it puts a limitation on your ability to put trade with other countries. How do you take that, bring that equation of national currency? It requires a lot of discussion, workshops, conferences of this nature, educating businesses, educating policy level people. It is immensely doable, but we haven't tried that space, that area of activity significantly. Let me bring in certain other fresh ideas which we already deliberated here. In my view, the idea of bilateral is very good, but we also have to look at the region as one. When I say region as one, within a large continent you have sub-regions. So looking at development within the sub-regional context is an important strategy going forward. We often forget that rules of the game, multilateral rules, are important because that provides guardrails for global trade and investment. We have to be actively participating and build coherence in the way we approach stitching multilateral rules. The luxury of consumption. Most of the Western economies are consumption-based economies, but I don't think the global south has a luxury of consumption-driven economic growth. That's where comes the idea of life. We have to be conservative at the same time. We are driving the economics of trading and consumption. An important area that's often neglected in the global south is actually women in the development. We haven't brought the debate into our circles. How do we put women at the center of development? We've been talking about it, but I think it's important that the woman also takes a central role in that discussion and debate. Women entrepreneurship, women's ideas have to be brought into the debate of the both South-South cooperation and the triangular partnerships. All these are interesting ideas, but in my view, to drive a trilateral cooperation, big projects, enduring projects, you actually need to have task forces for each of them in a manner of special purpose vehicles that's able to look at the entire ecosystem, the entire aspects of economics, balancing with development. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very comprehensive remarks. May I now invite Professor Sachin Chaturvedi for his remarks.
Thank you. Thanks, Abhya. Thanks, Secretary Damuraviji. Very comprehensive roadmap and very comprehensive, I would say, summary of the conference that you have presented in a way of the key issues that we handled and tackled. We have requested my colleague, Dr. Sabyasachi Saha, to present the takeaways, key takeaways from this conference. This panel would then comment upon the takeaways and we would move forward. But, sir, let me mention it to you that this was not just a conference. It was, of course, a conference, but was something beyond that. we could bring in different actors together, and they met in parallel sessions. They met in sessions which were going parallel not only to each other, but also in a thematic and directional sort of take way, enriching each other, so supplementing each other and not just on different themes and focus. We could bring in organizational entities that we have nurtured over the years. The idea of bringing in Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, FIDC. We could bring in NEST, the Network of Southern Think Tanks. My colleague Paolo is here. Stefan joined online, and our colleagues came in. We also got in Indian Economic Association. We have Professor V.K. Malhotra, Professor Verma, Professor Kanak Sabhapati. So they could bring in the gravitas that was needed in the discussions from the Indian Economic Association. We could also bring in Netra, our effort to connect Northeastern Research and Advocacy Group, which is bringing in India's Northeast into this conversation. And we had a good delegation from all the Northeastern universities. They contributed to it. And then, of course, as you rightly identified this morning, we had around 15 ITEC participants who were there in RIS at different points of time, and they identified and contributed. But much more than that, the substantive part came in from RIS experience in 2023 during G20 presidency with the University Connect. And we had great pleasure of having almost 10 vice chancellors with us, and a huge support from students and their faculty members from the University Connect, with whom with 25 such universities we have yesterday signed agreements. MOUs have been signed, and those agreements are going to focus on 3 broad dimensions. One, to continue research in the field that we feel is extremely important. There again, we have identified 4 broad areas: women-led development, so that university master's students or further senior students can deepen their research on women-led development, on digital public infrastructure. The focus is also on lifestyle for sustainable development. Fortunately, some of us have already produced some work which is going to contribute to pedagogy around life. So I have here Professor Pammi Dua, Professor Sita Prabhu, who have enriched the conceptual frameworks that are there. With Sabya, we also had this opportunity of working on it. Then we could also bring in a full group of South Asian Women Development Forum, and Madam is here. We had good discussions on how SARC community feels like on women's issues, and we could go forward. But large flow of the event also brought in what His Excellency President of Paraguay, Mr. Santiago Peña-Palacios, brought out in form of autonomy and decision-making space that the Global South requires. And he identified the priorities not only in context of India-Paraguay, but also larger context of the Global South, larger priority areas for Latin American countries, Central American countries. Our own Minister of State, Shri Pavitra Margarita, identified priorities for Global South, sustainable future, trying to bring in issues which are of great significance for a conference like this. With ICRISAT, we partnered and launched a new center, ICRISAT Center of Excellence for South-South Cooperation in Agriculture, which is more action-oriented. Part of it today came up in our ITEC session, where quite a few countries and our very distinguished ITEC participant from Ethiopia mentioned in terms of how this can go forward and what kind of AI-assisted technologies in agriculture can bring in. Our partnership with ICRISAT would strengthen Dakshin and ICRISAT partnership for taking agriculture forward. There were also suggestions in terms of how agriculture productivity across different crops can be monitored and taken forward. So that way this conference could bring in some action-oriented points. We could also take forward ideas and reference points like Bandung to go forward. and identify new theoretical contours that are there. As you are aware, the idea of Global Development Compact, where Prime Minister talked about bringing in not just aid, but along with development finance, we bring in capacity building, we bring in technology, we bring in the access to markets, so duty-free, quota-free access that India provides. And at the same time, also, if the grant element along with concessional finance can be done, so that, as you rightly mentioned in your keynote address this morning, we should not be pushing Global South towards indebtedness. You had precise numbers this morning, this afternoon, to discuss in terms of how much Global South is paying back in form of rate of interest that is being charged. So from that point of view, this conference could bring forward various dimensions of triangular cooperation. As you said, North should also be there. We had a speaker from OECD, and she identified yesterday how norm setting should be addressed within triangular cooperation, whose norms would prevail, whether South-South cooperation or North-South cooperation. So how do we converge? And just next to you is Carlos from the South Center. So we brought in institutions from the Global South representing entities who are bringing in much wider focus on Dakshin and on issues where partnerships and conceptual theorizations that we are trying to take forward are not only absorbed by our partners in the universities, but are also absorbed by research institutions. Two of our panelists are here from South Asia, Dushni and Posh. Both would be taking forward the South Asia dialogue. We also brought in issues where fiscal sort of focus should be there. I requested Bhanu to join this panel, so that would bring in where Global South has commonality in terms of managing their finance and bring forward issues which BRICS is discussing. You mentioned about the dimensions of currency and dollar. Some people do not like the word de-dollarization. We won't use the word de-dollarization. But the practical outcome is that countries are switching over to other currencies, and actual outcome is de-dollarization, even if we don't describe that process as like that. So we are seeing how alternative dimensions are coming in, and I'm sure the panel would address this. My colleague Sabya would give a little more details of this conference, but I just wanted to say that it was a conference, but something more than a conference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. A very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, let me pay my greetings to everyone on the dais. As rightly pointed out by Secretary, Sir, RIS definitely stands committed to meaningful research and as a platform of engagement of the Global South, and is an integral part of India's global engagement through multilateralism, regional cooperation, and bilateral partnerships in domains of trade, finance, and technology. RIS is grateful to the Ministry of External Affairs for the support and guidance in this effort. This conclave has been a special occasion to showcase the relevance, promise, and the new initiatives like Dakshin, and also connect with the domestic stakeholder community in India through the FIDC. The conference has been an island of hope in the middle of a very rough ocean. This conference has been uniquely significant beyond routine think tank engagement and brought together senior-most policymakers, international organizations, scholars, and academics from the Global South, think tank leaders, civil society, and entrepreneurs. Participation from all relevant regions, starting with Latin America, MENA, Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, the Pacific, as well as the Global North, has given this conference a true global character. This was particularly helpful in understanding the perspective from all, with diverse contexts in terms of per capita incomes, SDG progress, and unique conditions like landlocked territories or small island states. We collectively constitute what is known as Global South. This was particularly evident when we heard of situations which relate to debt duress and not merely debt crisis, and abilities to service debts and make macroeconomic course correction in an unequal world, where global north still has easier access to resources and means to deal with consumption beyond limits and borrowing from the future. This conference has been a feast of ideas and much more. The conference stands as a testament that the cooperation in Global South and partnerships with Global North based on equitable norms of development cooperation is most credible way forward in what Professor Amrita Narlikar mentioned yesterday, troubled times. The purpose, direction, and eventual roadmap with which the conference was conceived was bolstered many times over when we heard His Excellency President of Paraguay sharing his vision of the future and reaffirming values of collaboration in the Global South. He categorically suggested triangular cooperation works best when it reflects the foundational values of South-South cooperation, which he further went on to suggest that Paraguay and India proudly uphold certain principles like mutual respect and full ownership by partner countries, non-conditionality and non-interference in domestic affairs, demand-driven partnerships and not donor-driven agenda, solidarity, transparency, and mutual accountability. He said that these are not just ideals, they are the safeguards. They ensure that cooperation builds capacity and not dependency, and strengthens states. India's own transformations and growing economic capabilities under the guidance of Honorable Prime Minister was presented by Honorable MOS, who joined the inaugural session and highlighted the various areas of cooperation as agreed between India and Paraguay. Over the last 1.5 days, all participants reconnected with issues and delved deeper and presented valuable perspectives and roadmaps in panel discussions, knowledge forums, action labs, and solution hubs, alongside focused partnership sessions with universities, ITech alumni, and colleagues from the Northeast for allowing diversity of perspectives and enabling localization of development. In this short report of the conference, I may not be able to capture all dimensions of our multifarious discussions that opened new avenues of intellectual pursuits, but also had strong elements of concrete action, and hence my presentation would not be exhaustive. But eventually, we shall come out with a comprehensive key takeaways of the conference. The first high-level panel revisited the Bandung spirit, a clear recognition of solidarity-driven principles which were found equally relevant after several decades, even as countries of the Global South has remarkably transformed themselves. Yet aspirations remain unfulfilled, and rising challenges of participating in global governance frameworks have made collective progress elusive. The Bandung Conference not only marked a political and diplomatic milestone, but also served as a profound recognition of millennia-old civilizations, their philosophies, principles, and cultural depth. The session presented India's cooperation initiatives in the bilateral parlance through South-South cooperation and increasingly in triangular formats to share knowledge and policy ecosystems in areas like digital public goods. India's vision of a global development compact and operational experience of demand-driven and empowering model of South-South cooperation is a framework of collective progress. Increasing debt burdens are constraining fiscal autonomy in many countries in the Global South, limiting their ability to invest in essential services. India offers an alternate development model rooted in mutual respect, non-conditionality, and shared historical experiences with the Global South. Training, technical assistance, and knowledge sharing form the backbone of India's international cooperation. By establishing IT hubs abroad, India is enabling partner countries to build digital infrastructure and research capabilities. India's partnerships reflect diverse modes of collaboration like bilateral and multilateral cooperation with private and philanthropic organizations. This conference has also been about charting and reflecting on a new development paradigm in which the Global North is more accountable and responsible, while the Global South makes efforts on growing more sustainably. In the presidential address, we heard how His Excellency President of Paraguay not only endorsed the LIFE initiative inspired by Prime Minister's vision, but also shared his views that as to how intensive resource-dependent growth models often imposed or encouraged by external actors have degraded environments, weakened local economies, and left nations heavily indebted and politically exposed. This extractive approach to development has delivered roads without, as he said, roads without institutions, ports without prosperity, and debt without deliverance. He said that Paraguay rejects this path and believes that true development must regenerate, not deplete. It must empower and not extract. In more practical terms, how we integrate sustainable urbanization and urban mobility in the Global South with lifestyle shifts becoming increasingly important. Similar views were echoed in the Solution Hub of Life that highlighted building consensus on sustainable consumption and production as advocated during India's G20 presidency and bringing in various facets like social entrepreneurship, circular economy, value-based global institution, an ethical framework on development finance, and more importantly, engaging on well-being measurement beyond linear parameters of income growth. Overcoming the pressing global development and climate crisis demands a transformative shift towards sustainable climate-resilient development models. This involves collaborative leadership from the Global South, innovative governance, and ethical stewardship of natural resources to ensure inclusive and equitable growth for future generations. For example, South Pacific is home to unique ecosystems, ancestral heritage, and vast water bodies, yet severely affected by environmental pressures, strategic competition, and the need for sustainable development. Closer home, Bhutan's unique agroecological diversity from subtropical to alpine zones, making it ideal for growing diverse, high-quality organic crops due to its virgin soils, fresh water, and pristine environment. Integrating traditional knowledge in agriculture and natural resource management was also highlighted as a key to effective climate adaptation. Reinventing the multilateral development banks and reforms of the mainstream global institutions of importance like the WTO and the IMF was highlighted as a common and urgent cause. We must acknowledge that developing countries now face a dual burden, adapting to climate responsibility while grappling with rapid technological shifts that can widen inequality and disrupt traditional mass employment models. In the action labs, impactful case studies were presented, highlighting India's leadership in successful triangular cooperation initiatives and their replicability across the Global South. For example, Peru has implemented GPS-enabled social security systems to effectively reach and support remote farming communities. In Cameroon, the introduction of RAC-based seeding technology led to 70% increase in potato productivity. In Ghana, bamboo craftsmanship training provided by National Institute of Design increased the value of bamboo artifacts. And in Malawi, India-Malawi-Germany triangular cooperation case study, we see that this initiative led to establishment of women-led incubation centers. Mainstreaming gender into policy dialogues, action frameworks, and cooperation models within South-South exchanges was highlighted. Integration of gender across all policy domains like energy, biodiversity, and disaster management was an effective way forward. Gender-responsible examples already available within the Global South need to be amplified and institutionalized. Gender equality and employment are central, not peripheral, to achieving sustainable development and require transformative approaches beyond traditional models. A major focus has been on disaster preparedness within South-South and triangular cooperation. India, as everyone knows, has responded to natural disasters in the region and beyond, from earthquakes to cyclones to tsunamis. We recall the experience gained, be it in Nepal or more recently in Myanmar during the recent massive earthquake. Even as we discuss the expanding scope of triangular cooperation, there is need to reflect on the norms and modalities. Although there are instances of triangular cooperation from the 1950s, it is said that triangular cooperation in the past decade has increased. Since the last 20 years, although it has increased, it has been facing some challenges as well. The three challenges that were highlighted: first, how to solve the heterogeneity of principles between the global north and the global south, how to strengthen ownership and localization in the trilateral cooperation concept, and how to measure and assess and scale up triangular cooperation. Challenges faced by triangular cooperation are like decreasing overseas development assistance ODA, and nations cutting down development aid, and no clear mandate and framework strategic guidance that most ODA providers are adopting. Triangular cooperation is emerging as a transformative approach, no doubt, enabling co-designed and flexible partnerships that leverage local knowledge and innovations rather than simply filling donor gaps would be important. Examples of Brazilian experience of triangular cooperation, as well as the German experience of the triangular cooperation, was highlighted. Norms of triangular cooperation must seek balance between people and planet. We must also pay heed to the caution sounded last evening that too much of the conversation on triangular cooperation has been elite, technocratic, and jargon-heavy. If readers of major newspapers don't understand it, how will regular citizens engage with it? We need to own the normative space and bring development cooperation into public conversation. In the final session, it was emphasized that the Global South is no longer a passive recipient but an emerging leader in the global development architecture. With traditional multilateral institutions under stress, Southern-led international organizations are stepping up to deliver contextual solutions. Platforms like Dakshin are effectively fostering South-South and triangular partnerships, signaling a broad shift towards a more inclusive and decentralized global governance models. In doing so, we may focus our attention on poverty reduction, climate resilience, peace and security, and build models of cooperation that may stand up to challenges of speed and scale. Those should be solution-driven and bring in greater cohesion and coherence in conceptual frameworks to strengthen partnership between global North and South. Finally, the conclave has made significant efforts to bring in concrete action, be it signing of MOU between Dakshin and ICRISAT or signing of MOUs between RIS and 25 Indian universities under the University Connect Hub for carrying forward transformative development ideas from the emerging from India's G20 presidency and embed them with India's efforts of knowledge sharing with the Global South. This morning, we have heard significant contribution made by India's ITech program in building capacities in specific knowledge domains, and also heard back from our ITech alumni their work and suggestions to scale up knowledge cooperation and make them more effective by incorporating emerging fields like AI and geospatial technologies connected with real-life applications from agriculture to health. I thank everyone for your patient hearing and also thank Professor Chaturvedi for giving me this opportunity. I have a dual role. So may I now invite Dr. Dushni Virakun, who is the Executive Director, Institute for Policy Dialogue, for her remarks.
I take your permission to speak from here. Thank you. Let me first of all, at the outset, congratulate Sachin and the RIS team. You want to say? Okay. No, 5 minutes. Fine. For the leadership that they have given to this process and for bringing everyone here. It's been an exhaustive series of panels, and I think Sabya just summarized it very succinctly, so I'm not going to take long. Just 3 observations on what was discussed and outcomes. I think listening to all the panels, it's very clear that no one objects to the idea of triangular cooperation and the principles behind it. But my sense is, how do we, leverage this now? We've been saying, yes, we like the idea, but where do we go from here? And I'm going to touch on one aspect that was alluded to, but not really discussed at length, regarding first the role of regional financial institutions, I know the conversation was there on reforming multilateral financial institutions, but we have the Asian Development Bank, we have the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, we had the BRICS New Development Bank, we have the African Development Bank, and how to leverage these financial institutions into the triangular cooperation framework, I think, is very key. And the reason why I say this is experiences coming from my own country, Sri Lanka. Again, a reference was made in one of the panels to regional tensions, rivalries. Sri Lanka has been at the center of that. For us, Southern Partnership is working with China, working with India, and frankly, we haven't always got it right. But both countries are very important models, sources of development finance, technical assistance. China perhaps as a source of hard infrastructure, and India as a source of soft infrastructure, training, technical assistance, and increasingly now as the leader in the deployment of digital public infrastructure. Sri Lanka is working, getting assistance from India to roll that out. But when governments work with bilateral partners with those tensions in place, those programs tend to get interrupted. They are, different governments come, they get cancelled, and it creates a lot of uncertainty for investors. And I think here is where regional financial institutions can come in and work within that triangular cooperation framework to give some consistency and some principles to the kind of development financing that we raise from our larger southern partners. My second point is on the issue of, how can we scale up? In some of the lab examples were on research, but there are critical issues that, triangular cooperation has to find a unique proposition. There is north-south, there is south-south. What is triangular cooperation trying to achieve? And I'm just taking one example of migration. That is a problem for the West. It is a problem also for us in the South, because the West is putting in place, it is a political issue for them, putting in place policies to prevent irregular migration and at the same time attracting and encouraging our skilled professionals to migrate. We have had triangular cooperation in that sense with countries like Australia, where technical assistance is given, all kinds of assistance is also given to our armed navy, etc., to prevent Sri Lanka emerging as a hub for irregular migration. But at the same time, Australia would say, we would like to get your doctors and your engineers and your IT professionals so long as they go to some remote part of Australia to work. So, second point, I think triangular cooperation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dushni. That is excellent. Of course, migration of professionals to Western countries is a big problem which even India faces. Having said that, Posh, 5 minutes. Would you like to highlight your main points instead of getting into a speech? So that, so that we can have a good interactive session.
Thank you, Co-Chair, for
5 highlights.
For your guidance. Okay, first let me start with congratulating and appreciating my old friend.
I like the African way they do it. All protocols observed, and you get into the speech.
Professor Sachin and his team for successfully organizing this conference, and in his old conference plus. And I would also like to thank amazing speakers and their insightful thoughts. Well, let me highlight some of the takeaways I got from this conference. Number one, this South-South cooperation is changing over the time. Initially, let me term one, South-South cooperation 1.0. That was after post World War, second, and before Cold War. That is 0. And the second was after the fall of Russia and up to Trump 1.0. I would call it, South-South cooperations 2.0. And I think that the 2.0 and 1.0 was quite successful in the sense of, materially it was successful. If you look at the say finance or institutions or participations, and also in terms of idealizations. Idealizations means South-South cooperation was got recognitions during that period, and ontologically, that is the influence of emerging South that is recognized. So I would say that is successful, but in South-South cooperation 3.0, now the things have changed. Now South has, new issues are emerging. For example, climate change, or issues of inequality. We have changing global order. We have transactional diplomacy, and also and trade war and geopolitical tensions is always there. So for South-South cooperation 3.0, I think we need to reimagine the ideas of regional cooperations and work at global level, regional level, and bilateral levels. And we have discussions, there's a lot of discussions, and we have also floated ideas on how can we reimagine our South-South cooperations. We discussed from agriculture to alternative development, models, to digital opportunities. And we also agreed that there are a lot of challenges, for this South-South and triangular cooperations, but still there are opportunities. And we can seize, those opportunities. More or less we agreed on that. And maybe I just want to highlight, 2-3 points. Okay, I would have seen, I would have loved to have discussion in this conference. Number one, that is basically LDCs and graduations of LDC. South-South and triangular cooperations can help. There are altogether 44 LDCs, 8 from Asia, 33, 34 from Africa, 1 Caribbean, and 3 Pacific, right? So here the issue is how can this LDC can graduate to developing countries. In that process, and also post-graduations, they are going to lose preferential market access, preferential and concessional aid, and also support and capacity building. How this South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation can ensure their graduation as sustainable, as meaningful, as irreversible. I would have loved to have discussions on that issues. And another issues, particularly we discussed and have identified a lot of areas for South-South cooperations. But all this requires resources. But on the resources part, South-based development, we didn't discuss much about South-based development financial institutions. This can provide, we can scale up resources for our development. We can have some sort of innovative financing modalities. And again, for southern countries, they could have good resources without less conditionalities. That is another areas we could have discussed on that. And also we have sporadic or passing reference, particularly role of private sector on South-South cooperations. I mean, that issues didn't come out. And I would have loved, I mean, to have discussion on that, on those issues. And finally, what I would say is, like I've exhausted my point, and here I step over by underscoring that solidarity, shared dreams, and collective determination can transform our challenges into opportunities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paushad. Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to mention to you a living example of trilateral development cooperation. Dr. Pandey heads a South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, which we established along with them and other partners, including IPS and others in Pakistan as well as Bangladesh in 1994. This was supported by the Friedrich Schubert Stiftung. We ran the secretariat for 2 years and then handed it over to the Nepali organization ProPublic, which then established, registered SOTI. Paushad, you should not forget your history. It's a living example of trilateral cooperation as well as South-South cooperation. Thank you. Carlos, over to you, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. Thanks for inviting the South Center to participate in this meeting. As you know, the South Center is in itself a manifestation of South-South cooperation. It was created by developing countries and it works for developing countries. Of course, India has been a founding member of the South Center. We have now 55 members. So let me make 3 observations. The first one is, I think we need to recognize the work that RIS has done in the area of South-South and triangular cooperation. It's very important work. Of course, RIS has made a number of publications, has identified the problems that developing countries face. Debt has been mentioned, climate change, many challenges. But RIS has systematically made the point that the solutions cannot come from the north. The solutions will come from the south, from South-South cooperation. He has made the important point that the Global South can drive this development, can support development in the South. And really, we, in the South Center, we appreciate a lot the work that has been done. So this is premised on the concept that the South, the Global South, can be this force. And also the concept that there is diversity in the Global South, but this is not an obstacle. This diversity means that countries in the South can complement among themselves, they can work together and reach their objectives together. And importantly, this philosophy, this view about the Global South, South-South cooperation has also influenced very much the outcomes of the presidency of India in the G20. As we can see, for instance, with the establishment of the Global South Center of Excellence, Dakshin, and many other initiatives that are based on this concept that the Global South can collectively work in order to promote development, and it's not up to us, the Global South, to depend on the North. The second observation is about the future of South-South and triangular cooperation, and this is the issue which is presented for this session. As you know, ODA, Official Development Assistance, is declining. It declined by 7.1% in 2024 as compared to 2023 in real terms, and also a significant part, about 30% of ODA, is now spent in developed countries themselves, in particular in order to address the problem of refugees. Now represent just 0.33% of gross national income. As you know, the target has been for many years 0.7%. It was reiterated in the Pact of the Future, but this is not being reached. But then again, here is where the role of South-South cooperation comes to play. And certainly, it has often been said, you can also see this on the webpage of the United Nations Office of South Cooperation, that South-South cooperation shall not replace, shall not be a substitute for North-South cooperation. But given the current circumstances, I think we need to raise the question whether in the near future, actually the North-South cooperation will be the complement for South-South cooperation and not the reverse, because as we see, this is growing. And this conference, this is my third comment, has actually shown that South-South and South cooperation is not just potential, it's a reality. So many examples have been presented showing that this is happening and how this can actually grow. So this is not just something that is speculative, it's not a potential, it is something that is taking place right now. And finally, I was really very pleased when I was invited to this conference, thank you much again for that, when the conference started with the Bandung principles. I think this is very important because the principle number 9 of the Declaration of Bandung is about promotion of mutual interest and cooperation. And this is what we are doing now. We are working in the context of such important declaration. And as I mentioned, many examples show that this is taking place. So the South Center, of course, it will be very happy to continue cooperating with RIS and other stakeholders and many think tanks that have participated here. We really believe that IRS work has provided us guidance. South-South cooperation is there. Eventually, at one point, to substitute North-South cooperation. And this is the way in which our countries can collectively help our populations to better live, to address the challenges, and there is a hope that we can together build up this new world for our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Korea. What I would like to also elaborate upon what he said, that the predecessor of South Center was the South Commission, which was established by India under Dr. Manmohan Singh, the late Prime Minister, one of our best Prime Ministers that we had. And that South Center, even today, does work on trilateral cooperation. You do raise funding from Western donors, am I right? Yeah. So it's a living example of trilateral cooperation situated in Geneva, to which all southern governments also contribute on a regular basis. And they also raise funding, and we work with South Center in Geneva as well. Having said that, let me turn to Professor Bhanumurthy. Bhanu?
Thank you, sir.
5 minutes?
Yes, I can sit here and speak.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. First of all, let me thank RIS and Sachin for inviting me to this interesting conference. And also thanks to Secretary Dammu Ravi for summarizing so nicely. In fact, he almost covered all the issues that has been discussed, and also thanks to Sabya for summarizing it very well. Now that we have a very strict co-chair, so I'll just limit myself to, So and also we are speaking to academicians. I thought let me raise some of the issues that is relevant for future research within their countries and also for a global South perspective. I would like to, recently I was reading a report by Maria Draghi on the future of European Union. I think that report has actually rattled the whole European Union, and I thought a similar kind of report to the global South will be very useful. And I'd like to summarize some of the things that has been done in that highlighted in the Draghi report, and he's actually talking about how the European Union can really come back to that original glory. And he talks about 3 issues. One, I think the European Union has to focus more on digitalization. I think they are behind. And they talk about decarbonization. And finally, the important thing is about the defense, which actually they neglected for a long time. And this has relevance for India also. I think we also need to focus, not only India, I think for the global South, I think we also need to focus more on digitalization. In fact, yesterday some friends from Africa, they're talking about how there's a huge digital gap or digital divide that we have seen. And I think it's important for these countries to focus more on digitalization. And instead of defense, I think we need to focus more on the developmental gaps that all these countries are actually facing. And then the decarbonization. So there is a need for sequencing in all the three things. I would highlight, I think we need to focus more on the digitalization, then the developmental gaps and the decarbonization in that sense. And there are some few low-hanging fruits. One of the areas where we can actually cooperate is on the digital public infrastructure, which I think India's G20 presidency has actually highlighted very well. In fact, there is overcrowded in Indian context, in my view, when it comes to digital public infrastructure. So I think this kind of infrastructure can be shared with other partnering countries within the global south. The second area is about the early warning systems. I think this is very, very important, not just when it comes to weather, but also when it comes to the financial sector. I think today morning somebody talked about weaponization of financial system. I think that is the major area where the global south need to focus, and this is where the early warning systems between the central banks is something that can really help. And I think Sachin spoke about local currency trade and de-dollarization. This is another area where India has done much better, where we talk about central bank digital currency. In fact, Secretary Ravi also spoke about it. And in fact, we actually redefined our money supply by including the digital currency in it. So that is one of the best examples that we can carry in terms of reducing the transaction costs across the global south. So that is one major area I thought where we can really cooperate between the countries. In terms of the MDB reforms, I know there are already 2 reports. Again, as a group, Global South need to push the kind of recommendations that have been made in the Larry Summers as well as NK Singh reports. So I think I think there is a need for more discussions on the MDB reforms. Again, morning there was so much discussion about it, but I think in terms of the action plan, we need to really focus more on that. On the fiscal space, in fact, India has become a big example how the post-COVID fiscal policies actually helped India to retain its fastest growing large economy tag for a long time. And there are also lessons in terms of how we implemented the developmental expenditures in the kind of public delivery mechanism that we adopted in the recent period, also starting from the digital transactions. So they're all best examples, and I think these are all can be shared between the partnering countries, and that is one way you can actually balance your growth as well as public debt, which Secretary Ravi focused on. And the last point, which we don't have answers, is there a way we can address the whole issue of the tariffs that is imposed on almost all the countries? How do we can come out of those tariffs, and is there a way one can really learn among ourselves in terms of how to overcome, which is very unpredictable kind of a tariff regime that we have right now, and I think that is something left for all the academicians here to really work on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhanu. Thanks a lot. Let me take the opportunity of being the co-chair to also share some of my own experiences. What Bhanu spoke about in terms of India's development experience can also be shared, can also be seen in many other countries of the South. Vietnam is one, for example, which has done extremely well. Now, we tend to ignore. Argentina is also on its way to do better than what it used to do before. So therefore, what Sachin would be useful to see is what are the kind of economic management of many of these southern countries, which can be a useful lesson for other countries to follow. At least have a toolkit ready. Look, this is a toolkit. This is how these countries have done, and this also you can do that. We have been working in Hanoi, among other countries, physically, including 3 centers in Africa, Washington, Geneva, etc. We are practitioners of South-South and trilateral development cooperation and not just theorists. And therefore, some of the experiences that we've got have been very useful. One example I gave is setting up the South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, which is now an independent body in Kathmandu. One of our creations, and which we are happy about. Now, what we have seen is something which is very important, and let me underline the word, appropriate technology. It is very important that we learn from each other on the basis of appropriate technology, rather than Western technology, because that is often not suitable at all. The point is that we are all developing countries, so we have similar kind of political economy problems in many of the countries which are very similar. Unlike the developed world countries where you also have vested interests, but at the same time our problems are quite unique. They are different than what you see in many developed countries. And therefore appropriate technology is very important. Now, Damu spoke about the fact in this particular context in his opening remarks also, and I think I would like to highlight that as an important lesson that we can learn, Sachin, from this conference as to these are some takeaways which are very important, which I can see happening. Now, we can learn from each other also. A lot of people don't know this. We can learn from other developing countries. For example, in India we have a serious problem in our judicial system in terms of appointments and removal of judges. It's a currently hotly debated thing. Now the kind of model which is followed in South Africa and Kenya are far better than the models being followed elsewhere. The problem is that the moment we mention it to somebody, they see, Africa, as if it is not coming from Switzerland or USA that it is not good. It is what we call appropriate technology, has already been tested there. And that can be borrowed in India as well. So let us not ignore the fact that even Botswana can offer us lessons. There are many lessons which we have learned from our own. I still remember when we opened a Lusaka Center, the minister asking us, what is it that you come here to teach us? And my response was very reflex action. I said, we come here to learn as well. There are many good things that you do, which we can also, share with other countries, and we did that. I don't want to get into details a little too much. Now, Damu, on ITEC, what I gathered is something when we floated the Development Partnership Administration, it was going to be an independent body, and then it became a part of the government. And therefore it works like any other government department rather than as an independent agency. Now if you look at the model of DFID, for example, they have offices in various parts. Why can't DPA become an independent body and have branches in Africa, in Latin America, and other places, and be a true provider of technical assistance as well as developmental assistance? And these are both something which ITEC has been doing. And what I gathered the other day with regret is that it said private parties are not allowed anymore to apply for any grant. We have received grants from ITEC earlier, but they said no longer. I don't know why. They said, no, we have to invite fee or quotations, etc., etc. But anyway, that is something which I can talk to you separately as well. Now, fourth and fifth, and I'll conclude with that. We are facing many global disasters which I spoke about in this conference the other day. Climate change is one very big one. It's cropped up in various conversations, including funding, financing, adaptation versus mitigation, and what is it that we can do or not do. The estimate for climate finance as decided by UN panel runs into about few $1 trillion which is required in 2030, of which nothing much has come. If you look at the last COP29, the US came up with something like $238 billion, which is not even peanuts, if you look at the need that we have. Now you're looking at a situation where the US is has become a spoil sport, a very bad international citizen. A lot of people are dying in Africa because of the USAID's withdrawal. We keep on reading about it, and I'm sure my colleagues in Africa would know about it better than we do, because they have seen it on the ground. My own colleagues in our Africa offices tell us as the kind of misery which they are facing. There is also a call on other developing countries, rich developing countries like India and Brazil, to fill in the gap to the best extent possible. Humanitarian assistance is very important that we must look at as a critical part of South-South cooperation, and not just setting up dams or institutions, etc., etc. This has become now very necessary because of what Trump has done. Trump has withdrawn from WHO. It has withdrawn from climate change agreement. So there are a lot of things which are happening which the South-South has to cooperate more strongly together in order to counter the ill effects of these happenings. Fortunately, there are wise northern governments like the European Union or Nordic governments who are still on the international path of cooperation. So there are these friends there. So trilateral cooperation again then becomes very important for us to talk to them and see to it that we are able to fill in the gaps which are cropping up because of Trump's policies. And what Trump's policies are going to lead to is a bigger economic downfall. I was just reading today newspapers. India's growth in 2024 has been 9.2%, which is very high, but the estimate for 2025 is only 6.5 because of the global downwinds. The kind of problems which are going to emerge, the markets are going to shrink. Sachin spoke about consumption economies in the West. Of course, if you look at consumption economies, India is also a big consumption economy. 60% of our GDP is based upon consumption itself. So we are able to sustain our economy without external trade as a very important aspect. But for many developing countries, external trade is extremely critical for them to be able to get out of their current situation. Finally, what I think is very important that we are talking about South-South cooperation, we are talking about trilateral cooperation. Let us not ignore global cooperation. Ultimately, multilateralism is what is going to take the world forward in spite of the dips that we currently face. Let us not give up on multilateralism. And our Prime Minister is very keen, very strong supporter of multilateralism. And that is something which is an important message that we must convey, that global cooperation is not a substitute for South-South cooperation. South-South cooperation is extremely important for us to be able to keep our self-respect. That is the most important thing. Bosch spoke about the factors that Nepal, Bangladesh, others are becoming a developed economy. I thought that was good news. Let us look at it and very rightly he said that it is important for us to see how we can help these countries. India is already doing a lot of developmental assistance to Nepal, Bangladesh, etc., in spite of all these problems, and many other countries in the world. We must have spent over $3 billion till now. So it's not a joke. India will continue to do its best. That it will do. But I would like to conclude by saying that let us not ignore global cooperation and multilateralism. Thank you. And now the floor is open. Please, as sharp a question as you can ask, and if you would like to refer to the one gentleman in the corner. No speeches, please. Thank you. Yeah, I'll come to you next. Third, fourth. Yeah, your third, fourth, fifth. Yeah, please. 2 minutes max. 1 minute. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let us hear as many voices as possible. That is why I had to ask the speakers to speak in headlines.
Yeah, my question is as much open to the co-chairs as to our panelists from the South Asian countries. You spoke about Saudi being a very, very good example of how the civil society groups came together at one point of time. The issue was that it was funded initially by FES. So there was a time when there was a lot of interest in foreign agencies for promoting civil society dialogue across South Asia. Now we do not see that happening in the present times.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Even our Commerce Ministry supported it.
At that time?
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah.
We had a very wise Commerce Secretary.
So how do the South Asian neighbors, I mean the two friends who have come here, look at it, the scenario now? Could there be possibilities of a revived state support to such initiatives so that the problem of foreign involvement or foreign funding can be taken care of? The project of South Asian cooperation, maybe in the sub-regional context, needs to be revived. So in that context, how do you look at this?
Thank you. Let me give you a quick answer. There is already a South Asia Economic Cooperation Summit taking place every year. The last one was done by Soti, and the next one is in Sri Lanka. So there is a constant process which is going on, which is supported by ADB, World Bank, etc., including governments. Government of India is not supporting it, but that's a question that we'll ask them separately. Yes, please. Yeah, I'll come to the lady first. Yeah, after you, sir. Please do identify yourself.
Myself, Dr. Kailas from Kalahandi University, from Odisha. At the outset, I just want to acknowledge the immense effort taken by RIS for organizing such an eventful event. Actually, it's a great forum to learn many things. And second, I want to also owe my gratitude to the chairs today for giving opportunity. In the morning, I was just trying to put my question. I was denied maybe because of time constraint. Sir, my question is actually, there are a lot many being discussed in the whole discourse of South-South cooperations. There are many international organizations, basically. They are coming forward to help. They were coming forward to help South nations. But why now there is very, very constant inclination of these international organizations towards North, not to South? Could any panelist, including the chairs, will suggest some of the structural potential to overcome this kind of problems? Actually, financial assistance is the prime need for the growth of the this developmental project which is taking place between South and South. If we are always trying to get some financial assistance from North, then there is kind of denialism which is being very clearly visible. What would be your take on that, sir?
Thank you. I'll come back to the panel later. Lady here. Just a lady here, please. Please do identify yourself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity once again. My name is Tamchidem. I'm Bhutan Association of Women Entrepreneurs founder and CEO. And I wanted to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you all for kindly considering, what we had submitted, in fact, about women and grassroots. My submission here is to make a very simple request that when you all go forward with your plans, please don't make a box which everyone is supposed to sort of tick, but let each of us, bring forward our own strengths. We bring forward what we have and put it together, pull it together and go forward. This is just a small suggestion.
Thank you. Very, very good suggestion.
Thank you, sir.
The one gentleman next to you.
Thank you.
I'll come back.
My name is Arvinder Singh Brara. I'm Chairman and Managing Director of Mantic Consultants. The question is that, there is a tremendous degradation of the environment and pollution, etc. And this is seriously going to affect certain nations in the South cooperation, their very existence. So my question is, what can be done to emphasize the corrective measures in this area much more than what it's being done presently?
Thank you. Can I turn to the panel? I'll come back to the audience again. Sachin? Yes. Do you want to respond to some of the points? 2-3 more? Okay. Yeah, Paulo. And then there's two gentlemen at the back and then at the end.
Paulus Davis from the BRICS Policy Center. I have actually two questions, one for Ambassador Ravi. Please give me some hope. What we are seeing now is Trump is actually playing with tariffs and calling every one of our countries to negotiate alone with the U.S. And this is a very asymmetrical situation in which our countries have, if we go alone, we're going to end up kissing the ring and doing whatever he wants, from Starlink to tariffs and so on. We had, during the last 4 years, Indonesia, India, Brazil, and now South Africa leading the G20. During this period, we were unable to build up a common Southern agenda that could be pushed. How can we think about a common agenda and a common process of negotiation with the North, with northern countries, as, let's say, the new international economic order, as we did in the past? How can we think about such a process in our current times? That's one. The second one, very fast. I would like to hear from Dr. Wickaroon, sorry, I mispronounced it probably, a little bit more about the role of international financial institutions, particularly from the institutions from the South, the New Development Bank, the AIIB, and so on, in fostering South-South and triangular cooperation. Particularly with regards to the work with local currencies. These banks, they issued bonds in local currencies in the past, and how could they help to foster South-South and triangular cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you. Just one quick response. Our Trade Minister Piyush Goyal, 2 days ago in Paris, made the point again that we require a revival of the WTO dispute settlement system, which is sending a signal to the US that please come. On the contrary, we've also filed a dispute against the US at the WTO. Thank you. Two more at the back. There's two more. That's the last two, sir.
I'm Satish Mishra from the Arthashastra Institute in Indonesia. When we talked about the Bandung spirit and so on, a large part of it was to do with issues relating to governance and values and so on. One of the things that we could have addressed a bit more in this session is issues of public management, you know, whether it was anti-corruption, whether it was issues related to reform of let's say, of the bureaucracy, aspects of decentralization, all kinds of things that Indonesia has been struggling and battling with. It should not be just the economic agenda, but surrounding it is a very large and difficult governance agenda, but the exchange of experience would have been very valuable. I wonder why we did not.
Thank you very much. The gentleman at the end, just behind you. The last question. Sachin, the last question.
May I also ask after that?
Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is R.N. Das. I'm former senior fellow of the Institute for Defense Study and Analysis. My quick question is, to institutionalize this Global South, can we create a division in MEA, like recently a new division has been created, States Division, Indo-Pacific Division. Can MEA constitute a new division to look after dedicatedly on this Global South issue?
Thank you. Can I just request the panel to respond in as swiftly as possible? Damu, over to you.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I'd like to thank you. Your deep knowledge, your experience, and you were able to cover a wide gamut of subjects. So thank you very much for steering it and taking this panel discussion to such a interesting conversations today. I think a few issues that come to my mind finally, and let me broadly summarize in the way I would like to see it. Development is a very comprehensive word. You know, you need a lot of players in it. It's just not big industry, the government, but I think issue of the women, the NGOs, the civil society, because they work at the grassroots level. Because importance of the whole thing is that development has to be localized. That's fundamentally important for development to take shape of it. Now, how do you do this interface? Now, civil society, women groups, all of them will have to be actively be interacting with the government, so there is a policy corrections happening. The second aspect of it is, someone said about north-south, why just the commercial angle of it? But in my view, we have to also see the development by itself cannot be just a charity. It has to have economic dimension of it, because you would need as much as roads, buildings, infrastructure to be able to drive the development, because that's an acceleration process. Energy, also, as I said, development energy is so interlinked. So you got to have the commercial angle to it. You need to have the business in the forefront to be able to take that shape. The other element of is pollution and environment, yes, but this will not happen in a vacuum. It got to have a economic angle to it, because the economics of green energy, the green development, has to come into the forefront to be able to drive this. So there is a need for policy intervention, policy correction at all levels. Mr. Paula mentioned about Trump reciprocal tariff. Yes, that's true. I think it even more relevant for us, this topic today, of the importance of South-South cooperation. It reminds us that one country is able to bring in this dimension of reciprocal tariff, which is fragmenting and disrupting the supply chains, the global trade, then it affects poorer countries like us. So it's all the more important for us to be more united, to be looking at solutions to our own problems. But let me bring this angle of the BRICS and the G20, which you mentioned about it. But I think this is where more coordination is needed. Amongst the BRICS countries, they're emerging economies. In my view, as Dr. Carlos has mentioned, that North is not going to be driving all that. It has to be the South, and the South-South, and the North-South is a complementary role in it. In the same way, I see within the BRICS, emerging economies are in a position to bring some solutions to a large extent to the table. But we need to bring coherence to their understanding and be able to be united. Because all the BRICS member countries, most of it, the original founding members, also G20 members. Now you have BRICS new members coming in, even more dynamic the group has become. So in my view, the challenge for us is to find coherence and cohesiveness in the way we address the development issues in the days to come. But I think we need to have the conversation going. Values, principles, corruption, the bureaucracy, these are transparency issues, and I think nations will have to, the leadership will have to look into this. How do we address these challenges? I think a lot of it is happening in India. The digital governance, the e-governance, a lot of transparency, predictability is happening, and I think we can learn from each other on that level. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Post, 1 minute.
Okay, I just want to address two issues.
Sorry?
2 issues. Okay, one was on local currency bond. Well, I think, it's some sort of South-South and trilateral cooperations also. In our experience, we have started our agreement with Asian Development Bank to float Nepalese currency bond in London capital market. So here comes, multilateral agencies. And we also, planning to float, that bond, if possible, in South Asian countries. So that's going to be some sort of South-South and trilateral cooperations. And another is with regard to, there is one issue raised by one of the colleagues regarding, our resources and also expertise from North. But here I just want to highlight, we have already started, South-South cooperations based on the Southern resources, Southern expertise, and also southern innovations. I mean, I just want to give the examples. For example, UN-India Development Partnership. We have another, Turkey International Development Cooperations and Thailand International Development Programs. I mean, here we are using all southern resources and ideas. And I think, we can, if we can, consolidate, all these bilateral cooperations and create synergy among these cooperations, I think it would be
Thank
great.
you. Carlos?
It would be great, for...
Carlos, 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to make reference to another dimension of South-South cooperation, which is not linked to projects in agriculture or energy or digital transformation. This is cooperation in order to build up a multilateral system that actually serves the interests of developing countries. So this is taking place. This has taken place, for instance, when the new treaty on marine genetic resources beyond national jurisdiction took place. This cooperation has taken place now with this agreement on pandemic, which is not perhaps what we expected. But this is very important. In many cases, India is leading very much the Global South, in the World Trade Organization, for instance, in WIPO, in other fora. And this is crucial because, as was suggested by the question about what should the Global South do in relation to this aggression by the United States in terms of the reciprocal tariffs. And this kind of cooperation, strategic cooperation, is crucial. And also I hope that the BRICS will take more in terms of getting coherent approaches in order to contribute to build up this multilateral system that actually serves the interests of developing countries, and not as perhaps in the past. As we know, the system was created essentially by developed countries. Right. But we need to use this opportunity in order to change.
Thank you. What will be evident is the kind of discussions and the outcomes of the G20 South Africa in November. All these issues will be, will sort of dovetail into that discussion. Dushni?
Just very quickly on the local currency bonds. I think there are two problems. One is that the volume of financing that's needed is huge, and capital markets are not deep enough to meet that. And Sri Lanka is a cautionary tale of a country that then went to international capital markets to borrow. We raised about 20 billion. And when COVID hit and when you can't roll over the bonds because your credit rating has gone up, you fall into a debt trap. So these are the financing gaps, and even the multilateral banks, regional banks, simply don't offer the volume of financing that's needed for infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Manu?
Just to add
Including remarks, and then we segue to Sushil.
Just to add to what Secretary Ravi spoke about governance, I think governance reforms is a work in progress all the time. And one of the key things for the governance is data. And I think India's G20 presidency also focused on another topic which generally we ignore, that is data for development. And I think that will become a core for a governance improvement in all the countries like ours.
Can we do it in India?
We are doing.
It's horrible.
No, sir. We are improving, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I formal vote of thanks, 3 points I would like to mention here. First, which I gathered from the conference, it needs to be emphasized that triangular cooperation is not a replacement for North-South cooperation, nor to South-South cooperation. It is an additional effort in terms of reinforcing international cooperation for development. The second one is the triangular cooperation has opened new avenues for expanding cooperation and exchange in new form of partnership in which each partner has lesson to share and lesson to learn. And the third is, I quote recent writing Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, the global south would be relying both on what southern country can do together and on what they can seek together on the global agenda to achieve its common aspiration. And two issues which already covered by Sri Damuraviji, and the convergence in the modalities of North-South cooperation, and second is the finance for the big project. In this, esteemed dignitaries, distinguished guests, respected speaker, and participant, on behalf of RIS, it is my profound privilege to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for making this conference an outstanding success. First, foremost, we express our deepest gratitude to His Excellency Mr. Santiago Pena Pelosi, Honorable President of Republic of Paraguay, for sparing valuable time and gracing the presidential session with his insightful address, setting an inspiring tone for the deliberation. We are equally highly thankful to Sri Pavitra Margarita, Honorable Minister of State, Minister of External Affairs, Government of India, for his warm welcome, remarks, and continued support in fostering meaningful dialogue for Global South cooperation. I also sincere thanks Sri Harsh Malhotra ji, Honorable Minister of State for Corporate, during the inaugural session, his presence. Our sincere thanks also go to Minister of External Affairs for their continued support. We extend our heartfelt thanks to all the distinguished co-chair, keynote speakers, and panelists from across the Global South and beyond, representing academia, government, international organization, and civil society. Your profound insights, diverse perspectives, and thought-provoking discussion on critical themes such as Bandung principles, agriculture as a driver of growth, sustainable development, partnership, and evolving norm of triangular cooperation have immensely enriched this conference. A special note of thanks to our valuable partner, the Gates Foundation, New Delhi, particularly Ms. Archana Vyas and Pranav Sinha, as well as ICRISAT, for their invaluable collaboration in the special session on agriculture and launch of the website for the ICRISAT Center of Excellence for South-South Cooperation in Agriculture, and sign MOU between ICRISAT and Daxin. Thanks are also due to the Vice Chancellor, University Connect Hub partners, and the vibrant discussion during the breakfast dialogues, knowledge formed, solution hubs, and action labs. Your commitment to knowledge sharing and mutual learning has strengthened the spirit of solidarity and collective action. We are grateful to RIS Chairperson, Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma, for his initiative and support for organizing of this major conference. Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Director General RIS and Vice Chancellor Nalanda University, through his visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to advancing the discourse on Global South partnerships and triangular cooperation, has guided every aspect organizing this conference. His context-setting remarks and key takeaway have provided a robust framework for our collective reflection. Thank you very much, sir. We also extend our appreciation to the dedicated team RIS, whose tireless efforts behind the scene ensure the seamless holding this conference. I would like to personally thank to my colleague, Dr. Sabyasachi Saha, Dr. Pankaj Vasisht, Dr. Priyadarshi Das, Dr. Amit Kumar, Dr. Pratyush Sharma, Dr. Santhan Gosal, and research assistant and intern for their excellent support. Special thanks to the admin team led by Sri Anil Sharma, Anil Gupta, and Vednath Pandey, Anu and Kiran for logistical arrangement. Thanks to IT team led by Susma Bhatt, Durga Prasad, Rawat, and Nisa for excellent support. Our publication team, T. Malhotra ji, Sachin Singhal, Dr. Ivy, and Sanjeev Karna for their support. A big thank to the excellent support from the DG office team led by Ritu, Gaur, and Baljit, and all the MTS staff RIS for their dedicated assistance. I would also like to thank all the participants, both in person and online, from the Global South and Global North. Your active engagement and open discussion have made this conference a vibrant forum for exchange of ideas and solutions. Finally, We must also grateful to media for covering this event. As we conclude this conference, we carry forward the shared vision for a more inclusive, sustainable, and equitable Global South, driven by the innovative partnerships, triangular cooperation. Let us continue to collaborate, inspire, act collectively to address the challenge of 21st century. Many, many thanks again for the invaluable contribution of all of you. We look forward to continue engagement and future collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sushil, and we will now felicitate our honorable guests on the dais. We start with Mr. Damu Ravi. I request Director General to please felicitate them. Shri Pradeep Mehta, thank you, sir, for leading us in this session. Dr. Dushni Virakun. Dr. Poshraj Pandey. Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy. So kindly proceed for lunch. We have laid out lunch in Mumtaz. We are opening the doors here so that you can take lunch and come back to this hall. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.